Chapter 1100. Dragon Breaker. Lu Qing shifted his gaze towards Mo Lingtian and said indifferently, "What are you trying to say?" Mo Lingtian met Lu Qing's gaze fearlessly and said with slight anger, "I'm sure Senior Lu Qing knows the rules of the arena better than I do. Although it's not that we don't allow injuries or disabilities here. We definitely don't allow death. Right now, Senior Lu Qing has used such a terrifying move. He's planning to beat Brother Zhuo to death. How do you explain this?" A mocking smile appeared on Lu Qing's face. He said, "I've already reminded Zhuowen earlier that I'm unable to control the power of the dragon treading spear. So it's very likely that something bad will happen. That's why I've already given Zhuowen a chance to live." The mocking smile on Lu Qing's face grew thicker and thicker. He said, "It's this kid who doesn't know how to grasp the opportunity. He actually dared to hoot at me and let me use the dragon treading spear. Don't you think he deserves to die under the dragon treading spear?" "You." Mo Lingtian glared angrily, but he did not know how to refute. Lu Qing's words were reasonable. The latter had indeed warned Zhuowen earlier, but Zhuowen had indeed not listened. Even so, you shouldn't have tried to kill him. You only needed to defeat Big Brother Zhuo. However, you didn't show any mercy in that attack just now. Clearly, you had the intention of killing Big Brother Zhuo. After all, who would willingly kneel down and surrender during a fight? Jianan roared furiously. Lu Qing's gaze was extremely indifferent. He sneered, "Do I need you to nag about my matters? Didn't I say earlier that I've already warned Zhuowen?" However, he did not take the initiative to beg for mercy. Now that he's in such a situation, he can only blame Zhuowen for his arrogance. The surrounding people also had strange looks in their eyes. Lu Qing's dragon treading spear did not show any mercy. It even contained a trace of killing intent. It was clear that he wanted to finish off Zhuowen. However, Lu Qing's reasoning was reasonable. He had already warned Zhuowen that he could not control the power of the dragon treading spear. But Zhuowen did not admit defeat. Instead, he allowed Lu Qing to use it. The blame for this was not entirely on Lu Qing. It was likely that even if the Academy's upper echelons knew about this matter, they would not place too much blame on Lu Qing. After all, it was just as Lu Qing had said. He had already warned Zhuowen about the dangers of the dragon treading spear. Of course, Lu Qing's words were rather overbearing. With Zhuowen's character, it was impossible for him to admit defeat. It could be said that this was something that Lu Qing had planned long ago. He used Zhuowen's character to announce the power of the dragon treading spear in advance. Under this premise, if he accidentally killed Zhuowen, it would at most be an accident. Mo Lingtian still wanted to say something, but Lu Qing impatiently flicked his sleeve. A terrifying cold air swept over, forming a terrifying snowstorm that swept towards Mo Lingtian and the other three. Dang dang dang! The pupils of the four shrunk. Under this terrifying snowstorm, they were unable to resist and were forced to retreat hundreds of steps, almost to the edge of the arena. "The four of you should get lost. Zhuowen does not have the ability to die in the arena. It serves him right. If you're not convinced, feel free to challenge my big brother." A sharp voice rang out once again. Lu Xiang had her hands on her hips. Her beautiful eyes were filled with mockery as she stared at Mo Lingtian and the other three. "You!" Jianan cried out angrily as he stomped his foot. Just as he was about to charge out, Mo Lingtian, who was by his side, grabbed him. "Big brother Mo," Jianan said anxiously. "Jianan, don't be rash. You'll just be throwing your life away." Mo Lingtian shook his head. "But Big Brother Zhuo." Jianan's eyes turned red. Mo Lingtian shook his head and said, "The ice dragon still hasn't stopped moving. Perhaps Brother Zhuo is still alive. Moreover, we're too weak. It's impossible for us to fight against the Emperor Pavilion. If you want to avenge Brother Zhuo, you have to raise your strength as soon as possible. Charging out now is just throwing your life away. It's not worth it." Jianan calmed down when he heard this. Mo Lingtian was right. He was too weak now. He was only at the sovereign realm. With such a cultivation, not to mention Lu Qing, even Lu Xiang was no match for him. "Power!" Jianan clenched his fists and muttered with gritted teeth. "Power! Haha, the four of you are still delusional that Zhuo is still alive? Aren't you too naive? I can tell you that my big brother's dragon treading spear has seriously injured a peak heavenly master. Although this kid is a little different, his cultivation is so low. How can he survive the dragon treading spear? Lu Xiang mocked. Mo Lingtian and the other three looked gloomy. Their faces turned ugly. They fell into silence and didn't refute. They could also feel the power and terror of the dragon treading spear. They didn't have much hope in their hearts. In a remote corner of the stands, the corners of Evil Moon's mouth curled up. Moyan Wuxiang's beautiful face was slightly ugly. Her eyebrows were slightly knitted. It should be about time. The smile on the corners of Lu Qing's mouth grew, even more brilliant, as he sat on the huge ice dragon. After such a long time, he knew that Zhuo, who had been swallowed into the huge ice dragon's stomach, had most likely been corroded by the mysterious ice qi, and had lost his life. Is Lu Qing planning to release the dragon treading spear? With the power of the dragon treading spear, I'm afraid that Zhuo's life was completely cut off by the terrifying cold. What a pity! Such a monstrous genius actually fell in the arena. How ironic! Lu Qing's actions naturally attracted the attention of quite a number of people below the stage. Soon after, numerous private conversations sounded. They were just like echoes in the valley that continued to spread. At this moment, Lu Qing slightly raised his right foot. A surge of yuan power gushed out from the soles of his feet. Just as Lu Qing was about to step down, a strong sense of crisis rose in Lu Qing's mind. Moreover, this sense of crisis grew stronger and stronger, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. Fine beads of sweat appeared on his back. Kacha! The moment this ominous premonition appeared, the ice dragon under Lu Qing's feet suddenly roared. It actually began to crazily twist its body. Its huge dragon eyes revealed a trace of pain. What's going on? Lu Qing's pupils shrunk to the size of needles. Soon after, he felt the frequency of the twisting of the ice dragon under his feet suddenly increase. Soon after, he was directly thrown out of the ice dragon by this huge force. Lu Qing's feet took a couple of steps in the air. He stopped his body in the air dozens of meters away. His gaze was dark as he looked at the ice dragon in front of him, which had seemingly descended into a berserk state. His eyes were filled with both shock and bewilderment. Everyone below the stage also noticed the crazily twisting ice dragon. Their eyes revealed surprise one after another. Some were puzzled as to why the ice dragon had suddenly become so berserk. Even Lu Qing had been thrown out. What's going on? Lu Qing doesn't seem to be able to control the ice dragon. After some confusion, discussions sounded from the crowd. Ao Wu! Suddenly, the ice dragon let out a sorrowful roar towards the sky. Soon after, traces of cracks began to appear on the surface of its huge dragon body. Moreover, these cracks were like a spider web that spread in all directions. Very quickly, they enveloped the entire ice dragon. Bang! When the cracks spread all over the ice dragon's body, a soft explosion sounded. Soon after, the ice dragon disintegrated in front of everyone's eyes, shattering into countless ice fragments. The ice fragments fell on the ground and piled up into a small ice mountain. A figure slowly stood on the top of this small ice mountain. He held a long black blade in his hand and stood proudly on the mountain peak. He stared at Lu Qing above with eyes as calm as water. Zhuowen. Numerous gazes gathered on this figure. Soon after, the surroundings descended into a short silence. After the silence, an extremely intense uproar erupted from the surroundings. Zhuowen had actually come out unscathed after being swallowed by the ice dragon. Moreover, the ice dragon had also been destroyed by him? Everyone around the battle stage in the arena gathered their gazes on this figure in a tacit understanding. Moreover, the expression on their faces was surprisingly similar. There was a trace of dullness amidst the confusion. This fellow. Lu Qing's pupils shrunk slightly as he softly muttered. On the viewing platform, the members of the Emperor Pavilion led by Lu Xiang had sunk into a strange and oppressive atmosphere. They could only look at the figure on the peak of the snowy mountain, and were all speechless. Senior Lu Qing, is this all that your dragon-treading spear has? It seems that your previous warning was of no use to me. The figure at the peak of the snowy mountain slowly raised his head, revealing a somewhat delicate and cold face. The corners of his mouth slightly parted as a clear and melodious voice resounded in everyone's ears like a great bell, continuously reverberating. Hua! The instant this clear voice sounded, the entire arena erupted into an uproar. Zhuowen had actually destroyed Lu Qing's dragon-treading spear. The dullness in many people's eyes turned into excitement. This was a huge reversal. Originally, everyone believed that Zhuowen would definitely be defeated by the dragon-treading spear. In fact, there might not even be a corpse left. But now, when Zhuowen finally appeared before everyone's eyes, the blood in everyone's hearts was ignited. This kind of reversal was needed in a battle. Only this kind of surprise could catch many people by surprise and make their blood boil. At the same time, Lu Qing had fallen into a daze because of the figure on the peak of the snowy mountain. However, when Zhuowen spoke, his eyes turned gloomy. He also did not expect that his dragon-treading spear would be destroyed by Zhuowen. Looks like you're full of yourself, just because you managed to break my dragon-treading spear by luck? Next, I will completely destroy you. With a sinister gaze, Lu Qing's feet took a step in the air. Instantly, his entire body turned into a ray of light. He stretched out his hand, and the black iron spear was grasped in his hand. Once again, he flew towards Zhuowen. You no longer have this chance. Your strongest move can't even deal with me. What do you have to defeat me? Chapter 1101. Trample Grief Treasure Seal? Lu Qing's eyes hardened as he sensed the sorrow that involuntarily rose from his heart. With a cold snort, the yuan power in his body surged out like a flood, resisting most of the weakening power of the Grief Treasure Seal. Only one level of power has been weakened. Zhuowen's eyes hardened as he gazed at Lu Qing, who was once again emitting a terrifying aura. It seemed that Lu Qing was indeed much stronger than Pom Pom. He was actually able to resist so much of the weakening power of the Grief Treasure Seal. Zhuowen, it seems that your Grief Treasure Seal is not perfect. It does not have much of an effect on me. Lu Qing sneered. His foot suddenly stepped forward, leaving behind ripples in the air, as his entire body shot forward like a cannonball. Zhuowen was naturally unafraid. He also stepped forward as a massacre aura surged out from his body. Countless blood seas swept out from the space behind him, forming many blood-colored seas that supported Zhuowen's body as he fearlessly charged forward. Clang! The sound of metal clashing resounded. The Seven Murders blade and the black iron heavy spear violently collided, creating countless sparks. Lu Qing coldly snorted. His left hand slapped the handle of the spear. Immediately, an extremely cold aura spread from the surface of the black iron heavy spear. This cold aura was like a venomous snake in the dark, as it rushed towards Zhuowen's heart at a tricky angle. Fury Treasure Seal. Zhuowen let out a low cry as an invisible fury surged out from his eyes. Under the effect of the Fury Treasure Seal, this invisible fury turned into a real flame. This fury spread throughout Zhuowen's body, causing his aura to soar by several times. Buzz buzz buzz. The cold aura that was emitted from the surface of the black iron heavy spear was immediately annihilated by this invisible fury. The strength of the Seven Murders blade in Zhuowen's hand soared. With a rumble, Lu Qing's expression changed slightly as he continuously retreated. Thud thud thud. Lu Qing completely stopped his body dozens of meters away. His hands, which were holding the black iron heavy spear, trembled slightly. The web between his thumb and index finger had split open, causing traces of cherry red blood to flow out. The Fury Treasure Seal of the Seven Emotions Treasure Seal? This kid even exchanged for the Angry Treasured Seal? How can this kid have so many contribution points? Lu Qing's expression was extremely ugly. When he saw the Wrath Treasure Seal, he had a bad feeling in his heart. At the same time, he was extremely curious about Zhuowen's contribution points. This kid had already taken out 500,000 contribution points, and he had actually exchanged for the Wrath Treasure Seal and the Grief Treasure Seal. Didn't this mean that this kid's total contribution points might be above 800,000? It was impossible for a new student to possess so many contribution points. However, Zhuowen had done it. Zhuowen bent his right knee slightly, and a heavy 1,000-kilogram fall suddenly descended from the sky. He raised the 7 kills blade in his hand and continued to rush towards Lu Qing. The sharp whistling sound produced by the rapid descent spread throughout the entire area. It sounded rather harsh. Lu Qing's expression changed drastically when he sensed the strong wind that swept over from above. With a loud shout, his right leg pushed forward and ferociously kicked the black iron heavy spear. Surging yuan power condensed within the black iron heavy spear. Dragon treading spear. A dragon's roar was heard. A terrifying chill once again swept out from the black iron heavy spear, forming an extremely terrifying ice dragon in the air. The huge dragon's body appeared once again. Lu Qing stepped on the dragon's head. With a thought, the huge dragon rushed towards Zhuowen. Boom! Zhuowen's saber slashed at the dragon's head. Immediately, he frowned and retreated dozens of steps. The dragon treading spear's power was actually very strong for him. Previously, he was inside the dragon's stomach, so he was able to easily break through the ice dragon. However, the scales on the outside of the ice dragon were much harder and stronger than the inside. Even though Zhuowen had used the Grief Treasure Seal and the Wrath Treasure Seal, he was still somewhat at a disadvantage against the ice dragon. It seems that swallowing you into the ice dragon's stomach was a mistake. Lu Qing's face was ferocious as he sneered. He also figured out that the reason why Zhuowen broke through the ice dragon was probably because the dragon's stomach was more fragile. Therefore, Zhuowen was able to break through it in the end. Zhuowen glanced at Lu Qing in front of him indifferently. Immediately, he took a deep breath and said, "You will soon know that whether this ice dragon can swallow me into its stomach or not. I, Zhuowen, can break it open." As he spoke, Zhuowen raised the 7 kills saber with his right hand and gently slashed horizontally. His speed seemed slow, but was actually fast. Suddenly, a terrifying blood aura spread across the void. Within the blood aura, a bloody scene appeared. Slaughtering oath-breaking saber technique, slaughtering life. A majestic voice came out from Zhuowen's mouth like a great bell. Then, with Zhuowen as the center, an extremely terrifying blood-red domain condensed. Waves of blood aura erupted, forming countless blood-red vortexes. It looked extremely shocking. Slash! As soon as the slaughtering life was unleashed, a hole suddenly appeared in the sky above the blood-red domain. A huge crescent-shaped blood-red saber shadow descended, rumbling as it descended. What a powerful saber technique! Lu Qing frowned slightly. When he saw the huge saber shadow formed by the slaughtering life, Lu Qing's heart trembled. However, it should not be as powerful as my dragon-treading spear. It is no match for me when the two collide. Lu Qing still had some confidence in his dragon-treading spear. Therefore, after thinking for a long time, Lu Qing stomped his foot. The ice dragon under his feet roared and rushed directly toward the huge blood-red saber shadow in the sky. Rumble! When the saber shadow and the ice dragon collided, the entire battle platform shook violently. Some of the weaker onlookers knelt on the ground in an extremely sorry state, their eyes filled with shock. Crack! A clear shattering sound rang out. Soon after, the crowd was stunned to discover that the large battle stage had been completely shattered into pieces by the aftermath of the collision. What an intense collision! I really don't know who will win this battle. Everyone's eyes were firmly fixed on the saber shadow and the ice dragon colliding in the sky. They naturally wanted to know who would win in such an intense collision. The saber technique Zhuowen used at the end is very powerful. Just its aura alone is not weaker than Lu Qing's dragon treading spear. Maybe Zhuowen will win. You think too much. Zhuowen's saber technique is indeed powerful, but his cultivation is still too weak. It should not be comparable to Lu Qing's dragon treading spear. Many people began to discuss the result of this collision. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. They all knew that this collision should be able to determine the winner. After all, both sides had used their most powerful moves. Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, an intense explosive sound resounded from the frightening collision and explosion cluster in the empty space. The sound of a dragon roar and a blade cry continued to spread and resounded beside everyone's ears. This caused quite a number of people to cover their ears with their hands, as their eyes revealed a slightly painful expression. The dragon's roar and saber's chime did not last for long before it came to an abrupt end. Then, a piercing sound burst out from the sky, attracting everyone's attention. It was a rather sorry figure. When everyone's eyes finally landed on this figure, their pupils shrank. The owner of this figure was Lu Qing, who was dressed in a black robe. At this moment, Lu Qing's face was as pale as snow. There was no trace of blood at all. A trace of desolate blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Finally, he landed on the ruined battle platform. His chest was heaving up and down, and his breathing was rapid. Lu Qing lost. Looking at this scene, the first thought that came to everyone's mind was that Lu Qing had lost. After realizing this, everyone's eyes moved up and looked at the battle platform above. Above the battle platform, a proud figure quietly floated. Under this figure's feet was an ice dragon. At this moment, the ice dragon's huge head had been chopped off, and its huge body had been penetrated by a blood-red saber shadow. It could only twitch unconsciously. Hiss. Looking at this scene, everyone gasped. The end of the ice dragon was so miserable. Its head was chopped off, and its entire body was penetrated. It was simply miserable. This scene undoubtedly indicated that Lu Qing had lost, and it was an extremely miserable defeat. After all, the dragon-treading spear that Lu Qing was so proud of had been broken just like that. Lu Qing probably had no other moves that could contend with Zhuowen. Lu Qing actually lost? In the corner of the spectator stand, Xiaoyu slightly frowned, and his voice was slightly surprised. Moyan Wuxiang's cherry-red lips curved into a smile. It was as if 100 flowers were blooming, looking extremely brilliant and beautiful. Even Evil Moon couldn't help but take a second look at Moyan Wuxiang. Qing Yin, who was sitting beside Moyan Wuxiang, was also stunned for a while. She recovered and said in surprise, "Wuxiang, you're right, Zhuowen actually won. I said that this guy will always bring surprises. Now I'm right? Moyan Wuxiang's smile became even more brilliant as he said softly. At this moment, the members of the Emperor Pavilion, led by Lu Xiang, were all petrified as they stared blankly at the defeated Lu Qing. Pavilion Master actually lost. Behind Lu Xiang, many members of the Emperor Pavilion began to discuss. Their voices were filled with shock and astonishment. Originally, everyone thought that this was a battle that they would definitely win. However, such a result had exceeded the expectations of everyone in the Emperor Pavilion. Palm Master, who was silently standing behind the members of the Emperor Pavilion, stared at the figure floating in the void with a complicated gaze. He also did not expect that Zhuowen not only defeated him, but also defeated the third Pavilion Master of the Emperor Pavilion, Lu Qing. Wasn't this too abnormal? Impossible? How could my big brother be defeated by Zhuowen? This is impossible. After Lu Xiang recovered, she could not help but shake her head and murmur. She simply could not believe this fact. Chapter 1102. Evil Moon Senior Lu Qing. Is there still a need to compete? After crushing the ice dragon with his foot, Zhuowen arrived above the countless ice shards with a swoosh. He stared indifferently at Lu Qing, who had an ugly expression on his face. At this moment, Lu Qing's condition wasn't good. His footsteps were weak, his body was staggering, and he was gasping for breath. There was blood at the corner of his mouth, and he looked rather miserable. It could be said that Lu Qing was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Hearing Zhuowen's words, Lu Qing's expression became extremely ugly. Although he was extremely unwilling, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Even his dragon-treading spear had been broken by Zhuowen. He really didn't have any moves left to contend with Zhuowen. Senior Lu Qing isn't replying. Do you still think there's a need to compete? Zhuowen raised his voice. The terrifying blood-red blade under his feet slowly descended, gradually approaching Lu Qing. The terrifying sharpness of the blade spread out, causing Lu Qing's heart to tremble fiercely. I admit defeat. Finally, when the blood-red blade was about to reach Lu Qing's head, Lu Qing lowered his head and spat out these words through gritted teeth. With these words, the terrifying blood-red blade shadow immediately stopped. Soon after, an arc appeared from the corner of Zhuowen's mouth. With a wave of his sleeve, the blood-red blade shadow immediately dispersed. Lu Qing's words caused an uproar around the battle stage. Lu Qing actually admitted defeat in front of everyone. Big brother admitted defeat? Lu Xiang spat out these words in a daze. She slumped down in her seat as her beautiful eyes, stared at Zhuowen's figure with a complicated expression. It could be said that she had witnessed Zhuowen become stronger step by step. Although she didn't deny Zhuowen's talent, she still didn't expect that Zhuowen actually had the strength to defeat her big brother. Just how abnormal was this guy? As for the members of the Emperor Pavilion, they were all in a daze, as if all the strength in their bodies had been emptied. Big brother Zhuo won. He actually won. Jianan immediately cried out from the other side of the viewing gallery. Emo Lingtian and the other two revealed relaxed smiles. Zhuowen had given them quite a few surprises. He had actually managed to defeat a monster on the Heavenly Venerate ranking like Lu Qing. Lu Qing actually admitted defeat himself. Evil Moon murmured with slight displeasure. Moyan Wuxiang had a brilliant smile on his face as he said, "If he doesn't admit defeat, I'm afraid Lu Qing will have to pay a very painful price. Admitting defeat now might be a wise choice." Evil Moon, didn't you vow in all seriousness earlier that Zhuowen would lose without a doubt? Now that this situation has occurred, do you still think that Zhuowen isn't worthy of big sister Chen Shui? But Evil Moon sneered repeatedly and said, "He merely defeated Lu Qing. This Lu Qing is merely an existence ranked at the bottom of the Empyrean leaderboard. What qualifications does this boy have to be worthy of Chen Shui? You must know that Chen Shui was ranked first on the Empyrean leaderboard back then. This boy's current strength is nothing at all. I want to ask, how old are you and how old is Zhuowen? If Zhuowen is the same age as you, I'm afraid he's stronger than you. At least I think that with Zhuowen's talent, there's nothing wrong with matching big sister Chen Shui." Moyan Wuxiang's voice became a little cold. "You're just quibbling. Since you admire this boy so much, then I'd like to see if this boy is really worthy of Chen Shui as you say." The veins on Evil Moon's forehead bulged, and his eyes were filled with ferocity. He took a step forward and rushed toward the battle platform. Moyan Wuxiang's pretty face changed greatly when he saw this. He tapped his feet lightly and followed closely behind Evil Moon. Moyan Wuxiang was very clear about how strong Evil Moon was. This guy was a terrifying existence that had killed a first-layer Emperor realm expert. He was far from what Zhuowen could contend with now. At this moment, Zhuowen instantly arrived at the top of the pillar of the battle platform. With a swipe of his right hand, the 2 million contribution points in the pillar were all collected by him into the contribution counter. Looking at the extra 2 million contribution points on the contribution counter, Zhuowen's eyes became extremely fiery and excited. Adding to his original 500,000 contribution points, Zhuowen now had more than 2,500,000 contribution points. In the entire academy, perhaps only the supreme leaders of the 4 major forces could have such a huge amount of contribution points. It was really difficult for ordinary people to accumulate such a huge amount of contribution points. Looking at the 2 million contribution points on the pillar that had been collected by Zhuowen, many warriors below the battle platform revealed a fiery expression. 2 million contribution points. Many of them might not be able to earn so many contribution points in their lifetime. Although many people were eager to take action, no one dared to step forward. This was because after witnessing Zhuowen's terrifying strength, many people were extremely afraid of Zhuowen. If they tried to snatch the contribution points, they would undoubtedly be courting death. Lu Qing's eyelids suddenly twitched, and his heart faintly ached. Among the 2 million contribution points, Lu Qing had taken out 1,500,000 contribution points. Now, all of it had been taken advantage of by Zhuowen. One could imagine how he felt at this moment. After receiving the 2 million contribution points, Zhuowen was quite satisfied. His eyes revealed a satisfied look, and his expression naturally made Lu Qing's teeth itch. However, there was nothing he could do about Zhuowen. Whoosh! Just as Zhuowen was about to leave the battle platform, a piercing sound suddenly swept over. Then, a strong sense of crisis rose in Zhuowen's mind. Oh no, there's danger! With a soft cry, Zhuowen took a step forward. His speed soared to the extreme as he wanted to leave the pillar. "You'd better stay here first. Why are you leaving so early?" An indifferent voice sounded. Then, Zhuowen keenly discovered that the space within dozens of meters around him had completely frozen. It was as if time had stopped. Under this frozen space, Zhuowen's body seemed to be bound by thousands of ropes, and he could not move at all. This sudden and unforeseen event instantly drew the attention of everyone in the surroundings. Because everyone noticed that at the instant that indifferent voice sounded out, Zhuowen, who originally intended to leave, seemed as if time had stopped, and he stopped in midair without moving at all. Such a strange scene naturally caused many people to be surprised in their hearts. However, they were no fools. The reason why Zhuowen was like this was definitely because someone had acted to restrain him. However, who exactly was the person who had restrained Zhuowen? With such doubts in mind, everyone's eyes followed the indifferent voice. In the rather remote direction of the stands, a demonic young man with black hair, black eyes, and black lips was walking towards them step by step. Everyone's eyes revealed a puzzled look. Obviously, many people did not know this demonic young man. However, the terrifying aura of this young man filled everyone's hearts with fear. Lu Qing naturally also noticed this demonic young man with black hair, black eyes, and black lips. He was startled at first, and then his eyes revealed a rich look of horror. He could not help but exclaim, "Xiaoyu?" As soon as these words came out, the surroundings fell into a strange silence. However, after the silence, an extremely shocking uproar broke out. "It's Xiaoyu? Xiaoyu, who is ranked first on the Heavenly Master list. Oh my god, Xiaoyu actually appeared on this battle stage. Is he also here to watch the battle between Zhuowen and Lu Qing?" Everyone's eyes were fixed on Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu's whereabouts were extremely mysterious. He had always appeared and disappeared unpredictably. Most of the students had only heard of Xiaoyu's name, but they did not know his face at all. Therefore, they did not recognize Xiaoyu before. "Xiaoyu." Zhuowen turned around with some difficulty. His eyes were slightly cold as he stared at the demonic young man in front of him. Although he was quite surprised and puzzled by Xiaoyu's appearance, his expression was more indifferent. "I don't think we have met before, right? Why did you attack me?" After asking this question, Zhuowen was a little depressed. Xiaoyu was very powerful, so powerful that even his heart trembled. However, he was more puzzled. He had never met Xiaoyu, so why did Xiaoyu suddenly appear to attack him? Moreover, Zhuowen was keenly aware that there was a trace of hostility in Xiaoyu's eyes. This trace of hostility made Zhuowen even more baffled. He did not seem to have provoked Xiaoyu, did he? "We really haven't met before. I'm here because of Chen Shui. According to Chen Shui, you are her sweetheart. I'm here to see how powerful Chen Shui's so-called sweetheart is. However, in my opinion, you are just an ant. You are not worthy of Chen Shui at all." When Zhuowen was full of doubts, Xiaoyu's indifferent voice resounded in Zhuowen's mind. It made Zhuowen reveal a look of understanding. It seemed that Xiaoyu was one of Mu Qinshue's pursuers. Moreover, he knew that Mu Qinshue's sweetheart was Zhuowen. No wonder the hostility in Xiaoyu's eyes was so obvious. Xiaoyu's attack made Lu Qing stunned at first. Then he revealed a gloating expression. He knew how terrifying Xiaoyu was. Zhuowen's battle strength was strong, but in front of Xiaoyu, he was no different from an ant. "Xiaoyu, don't go too far. Zhuowen is just a freshman. You actually attacked him. Do you have any shame?" A delicate cry followed closely behind, following which, a graceful figure with a veil covering her face landed in front of Evil Moon. She stretched out a jade-white hand, and suddenly reached out in an attempt to break the restraining force around Zhuowen. "Moyan Wushang, you'd better not meddle in my affairs," Xiaoyu said indifferently. With a shake of his sleeve, a substantial black light burst out and rushed toward Moyan Wushang. Moyan Wushang's pretty face changed slightly. Her jade-like palm changed. A white light rushed out and slammed into the black light. Immediately, a muffled thunder-like sound erupted. Moyan Wushang snorted and took 2 steps back. Her beautiful eyes stared at Xiaoyu. Whoosh! The moment Moyan Wushang retreated, Qingyin also arrived. She came to Moyan Wushang's side and coldly shouted at Xiaoyu. "Xiaoyu, don't go too far. As a senior, you bully the young. Don't you feel ashamed of bullying Zhuowen?" Chapter 1103. Forbidden Airspace Domain. Qingyin and Moyan Wushang, the Pavilion Master of Fragrant Ink Pavilion, are also here? Everyone's eyes gathered on Moyan Wushang and Qingyin. The moment Evil Moon spoke, Qingyin and Moyan Wushang's identities were also revealed. Moyan Wushang, Qingyin and Evil Moon, the leaders of the four strongest forces in the outer court, had actually come all of a sudden. Only Di Ba, the pavilion master of the Emperor Pavilion, did not appear here because he was in seclusion. 3 pavilion masters have come all of a sudden. Are they all here for Zhuowen? After recognizing Moyan Wushang and Qingyin's identities, many people below the stage were shocked. They could also see that the 3 pavilion masters were here for Zhuowen, while Lu Qing was ignored by the 3 pavilion masters. Seeing that the 3 pavilion masters' attention was all on Zhuowen, Lu Qing's face was completely gloomy. In any case, he was the 3rd pavilion master of the Emperor Pavilion. Although the 3 of them were the leaders of the other 3 pavilions, ignoring him like this still made Lu Qing's cheeks burn. Although he was extremely unhappy, Lu Qing naturally did not dare to show it. After all, he was only the 3rd pavilion master of the Emperor Pavilion, and was far from qualified to have an equal conversation with Evil Moon and the other 2. If Di Ba and Di Shi were here, they might be qualified to interrupt. Evil Moon glanced indifferently at Moyan Wushang and Qingyin, and said indifferently, "Are the 2 of you planning to be enemies with me for Zhuowen? It's not that we are enemies with you, but that you have gone too far. After all, you are a senior, and Zhuowen is just a freshman. Don't you feel that you are degrading your reputation as the pavilion master of the Haoyu Pavilion by bullying the weak?" Moyan Wushang said coldly, "You say that I am bullying the weak?" Evil Moon narrowed his eyes and immediately turned his attention to Zhuowen. He said, "I don't need to deal with this kind of ant. You 2 don't have to touch this air-restricting domain. If he can break it, I will let him go. If he can't, the air-restricting domain will explode after 30 minutes. Its power is enough to kill a celestial master at the peak." As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes turned cold. Evil Moon was really ruthless. At first glance, one could tell that the power of the airtight domain was extremely terrifying. Moreover, its self-destruction could kill a celestial master at the peak. This was simply the purpose of killing Zhuowen. If it were not for a miracle, Zhuowen would be doomed. This brat is really a troublemaker. I don't know what he has done to Evil Moon. Even Evil Moon has come to deal with him. Looking at this scene, Lu Qing's eyes were filled with schadenfreude. Now he could not wait for Zhuowen to die. Now that Evil Moon had taken action, he felt much more at ease, because he knew that Zhuowen would definitely not be able to escape this calamity. Evil Moon, you've gone too far. Moyan Wushang's beautiful eyes were extremely gloomy. The air-restricting domain that Evil Moon had cast on Zhuowen was very powerful. Although she was quite optimistic about Zhuowen, she also knew that the possibility of Zhuowen escaping from the air-restricting domain was very small. Evil Moon intended to kill Zhuowen. Evil Moon, the academy has a rule that students are not allowed to kill each other. Your action is a bit too much. Soft Sound was also very unhappy. Evil Moon smiled coldly and said, "Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. This air-restricting domain is under my control. When it self-destructs, I won't take the ant's life, but it will be inevitable if he is crippled. Of course, if the 2 of you take action, then I won't stay idle. The 2 of you are still not my opponent." Moyan Wushang and Soft Sound's faces were ugly. Evil Moon's strength was much stronger than the 2 of them. Even if the 2 of them joined forces, it was unlikely that they would be Evil Moon's opponent. Therefore, the 2 of them were powerless even if they wanted to. At this moment, Zhuowen in the air-restricting domain suddenly spoke. Zhuowen nodded to Moyan Wushang and Soft Sound and said gratefully, "Thank you for your kindness, Miss Wushang and Soft Sound. Let me, Zhuowen, break this situation by myself." After saying that, Zhuowen turned to look at Evil Moon and said with a cold gaze, "You just said that as long as I break this air-restricting domain, it will be enough, right?" Evil Moon looked down at Zhuowen coldly and said, "That's for sure. I have never broken my promise. If an ant like you can break this air-restricting domain, I will naturally keep my promise and not attack you." "Good. I hope you can keep your promise. Don't break it like a villain." Zhuowen spat out these words quite seriously. Immediately, his gaze was extremely solemn as he looked at the air-restricting domain that wrapped around him. This power was very strange. It was like an invisible rope that tied Zhuowen up from head to toe. making him unable to move at all. You can rest assured that I don't need to break my promise to you, because with your strength, it is impossible for you to break out of this air-restricting domain, Evil Moon said proudly. Zhuowen nodded and immediately ignored Evil Moon. Instead, he focused all his attention on the air-restricting domain around him. Slaughter momentum, Zhuowen shouted in a low voice. His right wrist bent slightly. Immediately, the 7 kills saber, under the effect of the slaughter momentum, made a buzzing sound and violently swept out. A sea of blood spread out from the void and wrapped the entire 7 kills saber. Whoosh! The 7 kills saber broke through the air and blasted toward the barrier at the edge of the air-restricting domain. Boom! A low explosion resounded. Immediately, the trajectory of the 7 kills saber came to a halt. It blasted on the barrier of the air-restricting domain. A powerful force erupted, but it had no effect on the air-restricting domain. Whoosh! The 7 murders blade let out a wail as it shot backwards, and once again landed in Zhuowen's hand. The latter's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. The barrier of this forbidden sky domain was truly powerful. The 7 murders blade, which had unleashed a killing aura, was actually unable to shake it at all. With your strength, it is not realistic for you to shake the barrier of the air-restricting domain. Evil Moon sneered. However, Zhuowen's eyes glinted coldly as he said indifferently, "Are you done with your nonsense? If you are, you can shut up. Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you are stronger than me. Looking at your appearance, you are at least 4 or 5 years older than me. At this age, you have not broken through to the Emperor realm. Don't you feel ashamed? Now, you are showing off your strength and power in front of a warrior who is weaker than you. Do you feel proud?" Evil Moon's face froze. Apparently, he did not expect Zhuowen to speak to him in such a way. His eyes suddenly revealed a touch of coldness. You continue to be stubborn. After 30 minutes, the air-restricting domain will explode. Then you will be in trouble. Evil Moon said coldly and no longer spoke. Instead, he looked down at Zhuowen indifferently. He was extremely confident in his air-restricting domain. Although it was only a part of the power in his body, it was not something that Zhuowen could resist. The people around also shook their heads with some sighs. They were speechless that Zhuowen dared to provoke Evil Moon in such a dangerous situation. Was he not courting death? Dragon form. Zhuowen used the Dragon Man form this time. The power in his body suddenly increased by hundreds and thousands. His punch had the power of thousands of pounds. It faintly shook the barrier of the air-restricting domain, which surprised Evil Moon. Dragon Soul? Is this guy's armor soul a dragon soul? Evil Moon revealed a thoughtful look, but he was still extremely confident. Even if Zhuowen used the Dragon Soul, it would not be so easy to completely break the air-restricting domain. Your struggle is futile. I think you should just give up. Looking at Zhuowen, who shook the air-restricting domain but did not break it, the corners of Evil Moon's mouth were full of sarcasm. Zhuowen turned a deaf ear to Evil Moon's words. He did not pay attention to them at all. Instead, he used various means to attack the air-restricting domain. However, to Zhuowen's disappointment, the air-restricting domain was stronger than he had expected. Although he could shake it, it was really difficult to completely break it. Time passed slowly, and 30 minutes soon passed. Many people in the audience shook their heads. The time was almost up. The air-restricting domain was about to explode. Zhuowen was really doomed. Evil Moon, that's enough. Moyan Wuxiang was also anxious. She stepped on the void and rushed toward the air-restricting domain again. She intended to break it herself. Umph! Evil Moon sneered. He stepped out and blocked in front of Moyan Wuxiang. His right palm blasted out, and a black energy was spat out, blasting toward Moyan Wuxiang. Moyan Wuxiang bit her lower lip, and also blasted out a palm. Suddenly, the two palms collided, and a terrifying power burst out. A terrifying hurricane swept out between the two. Moyan Wuxiang took a few steps back with a muffled groan. Evil Moon was as still as a mountain, staring at Moyan Wuxiang indifferently. Moyan Wuxiang was anxious, but there was nothing she could do. Evil Moon's strength was stronger than hers. She could not break through Evil Moon's defense and reach the air-restricting domain. You can't get close to the air-restricting domain. I can promise you that I won't take this ant's life. So don't make such a pointless struggle, Evil Moon said indifferently. Hearing this, Moyan Wuxiang stopped in her place. Her beautiful face was full of uncertainty. Her beautiful eyes were cast toward Zhuowen's figure in the air-restricting domain. Her eyes were full of worry. Looks like there's not much time left. I can only try this. Zhuowen also felt the urgency of time. He took a deep breath, stretched out his right hand, and gently touched his forehead. Suddenly, a surge of mind energy burst out, and this mind energy became more and more powerful. It formed a terrifying mind energy storm in the void behind Zhuowen. What a powerful mind energy! This kid is also an arcana master? Feeling the surge of mind energy, many people in the audience were shocked. When Zhuowen's mind energy reached the limit, Evil Moon and the others' faces froze. Chapter 1104. Self-detonation boom. Mind power as vast as the sea burst out from Zhuowen's Naiwen Palace, tearing the surrounding air, and making a sharp whistling sound. This scene naturally attracted everyone's attention. Mind power of the lesser 6th level? Zhuowen's mind power is so strong? Lu Qing looked at this scene, his expression uncertain. He felt a sense of humiliation in his heart. This kid did not use such strong mind power when they fought. Clearly, in Zhuowen's eyes, he did not need to use his full strength to deal with Lu Qing. Moreover, if Zhuowen used his mind power at the same time, it would be easier for him to defeat Lu Qing. Thinking of this, Lu Qing's mood became more and more unpleasant. It seemed that he had underestimated Zhuowen from the beginning. I remember that 4 days ago, a new 6th-level arcanist was promoted in the Arcane Tower. Could that guy be Zhuowen? After a moment of astonishment, some of them suddenly thought of something. That was the matter of the newly advanced level 6 Arcana Master from the Arcana Tower 4 days ago. Apparently, this level 6 Arcana Master was the last disciple of Grandmaster Lan Miao on the 6th floor. However, the Arcane Tower was a special force that was independent of the Academy. The students in the Academy, who were not from the Arcane Tower, rarely came into contact with this force. In addition, the Arcane Tower was very low-key. So many people in the Academy knew very little about what had happened in the Arcane Tower. However, there were many students in the Academy who cultivated both martial arts and mind power, so they knew a little about what had happened in the Arcane Tower 4 days ago. They had only heard that there was a new 6th-level arcanist, but they did not know who this new 6th-level arcanist was. Now that Zhuowen had displayed 6th-level mind power, the people around quickly thought of the new 6th-level arcanist in the Arcane Tower. Moyan Wuxiang and Soft Note were also a little stunned. Zhuowen's martial arts strength was already quite terrifying. After all, he was at the peak of the Golden Venerable stage and had defeated Lu Qing, who was ranked 30th on the Celestial Master list. He was already considered a genius. However, such a martial arts genius was actually a lesser 6th-level arcanist. This could no longer be described as a genius, but a freak of nature. Most likely, even in the Arcana Tower, no arcanist as young as Zhuowen would be able to reach Zhuowen's heights. This little brat, he really hid his strength well. Qingyin shook her head slightly as she whispered in surprise. Moyan Wuxiang, who was next to Soft Note, had a bright smile. Zhuowen had brought him surprises. Zhuowen, is this the studio? Moyan Wuxiang studio, Moyan Wuxiang Yuxiang. Moyan Wuxiang had Moyan studio. Moyan Wuxiang had watched. This was because Zhuowen had no background. He didn't have a huge amount of resources for him to squander. Everything he had was obtained by risking his life. Moyan Wuxiang understood how much Zhuowen had suffered in order to reach this point. Therefore, when she saw Zhuowen's achievements getting higher and higher, Moyan Wuxiang felt a trace of relief in her heart. At the same time, she felt a touch of sadness. She knew that this young man's heart was occupied by another person. Boom, boom. Terrifying mental energy surged out, and then the forbidden space barrier trembled violently. This time, the trembling was far more violent than the previous times. Even Evil Moon's heart trembled. Zhuowen cultivated the 10,000 derivation scripture, so his spiritual energy could be split into nearly 1,000 strands. His spiritual energy was far more powerful than that of a level 6 lesser success Arcana Master. Although he still couldn't compare to a level 6 greater success arcana master, the difference wasn't too big. Although the forbidden space barrier trembled violently this time, it still didn't break. Looking at this scene, Evil Moon relaxed, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a mocking smile. Zhuowen even released the mental strength of level 6 lower realm. Obviously, this should be his last resort. Even with such means, he still could not break through the air-restricting domain. In Evil Moon's opinion, Zhuowen must have exhausted all his tricks. 10,000 derivation scripture multiplication. Feeling the tenacity of the forbidden space barrier, Zhuowen didn't hold back anymore. Instead, he used the 10,000 derivation scripture. Waves of mental energy surged out, and nearly 1,000 strands of level 6 lesser success arcana masters gathered around Zhuowen. For a moment, the atmosphere of the forbidden space barrier was stagnant to the extreme. Break! An indifferent voice resounded in the forbidden space barrier. Immediately, the forbidden space barrier, which was as solid as gold and stone, trembled violently again. This trembling began to spread to the surroundings, causing the surroundings of the fighting platform to shake slightly. Crack! Suddenly, cracks began to appear on the barrier of the forbidden space barrier. Like a spider web, the cracks began to spread, firmly attracting everyone's attention. Is the forbidden space barrier going to break? Looking at this scene, everyone was looking forward to it, their eyes full of astonishment. Evil Moon's face also stiffened. Her eyes flickered, especially when she looked at the cracks that began to spread across the entire forbidden space barrier. Her eyes revealed a touch of coldness. It's going to break. Qingyin and Moyan Wuxiang looked at each other and saw a touch of surprise in each other's eyes. Explode! Just as the airtight barrier was about to break, Evil Moon softly spat out this word. Then the airtight domain began to surge with a terrifying explosive energy. It first contracted, then suddenly expanded, and directly exploded. Zhuowen, who was controlling his mental energy to break through the forbidden airspace domain, also felt the terrifying explosive power within the forbidden airspace domain. His pupils shrank to the size of needles, and a strong sense of foreboding rose in his mind. Suddenly, the mental strength around him shrank and protected his body. Then, Zhuowen's right hand touched his forehead and took out the Jade Cauldron Armor Soul. He extracted 81 rays of dragon power, which surrounded Zhuowen's body, forming a dragon domain. Shadows of dragons circled around him. Boom! 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 The terrifying explosion sounded like muffled thunder. Then, a soul-stirring ripple radiated in all directions, causing many people around the fighting platform to show fear in their eyes and step back. The power of the explosion was too terrifying. Just the energy ripple that escaped from the explosion made everyone faintly frightened. Evil Moon, what are you doing? It hasn't even been half an hour, and you actually caused the forbidden space barrier to explode? Moyan Wuxiang and Qingyin were startled at first, but then they glared at Evil Moon, who was not far away. They naturally knew that the forbidden space barrier exploded in advance because of Evil Moon. Evil Moon gently tapped the finger of his right hand and said indifferently, "The time is almost up. Why can't it explode now?" It can only be said that Zhuowen is too slow. If he could break through the forbidden space barrier earlier, he wouldn't have to bear such a terrifying explosion. Evil Moon, I didn't expect you to be so despicable. There is still half an hour before the time is up, and Zhuowen is about to escape. You chose to explode at this time. Clearly you want to kill Zhuowen. Moyan Wuxiang was so angry that her delicate body trembled. Evil Moon's method was too despicable. Many people in the audience looked at Evil Moon with a strange expression. Moyan Wuxiang was right. The time it took for a stick of incense to burn was not up, but the no-fly zone had exploded in advance. In such a situation, as long as one wasn't a fool, one could imagine that it was Evil Moon's doing. Evil Moon's eyes darkened when he heard this. He said coldly, "Moyan Wuxiang, I think you'd better not slander others. The closer the time is to the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the more unstable the forbidden space barrier becomes. You can only blame Zhuowen's bad luck. At this critical moment, he triggered the unstable factor of the forbidden space barrier, causing it to explode in advance." You are really a disgrace to the number 1 on the heavenly sovereign list. Moyan Wuxiang said coldly. She took a step forward and rushed towards the center of the explosion. She intended to extinguish the explosive energy and save Zhuowen. Evil Moon's gaze was cold, but the corners of his mouth were curled up in a sneer. The explosion of the no-fly zone was the strongest at the beginning. Zhuowen had probably already met his end at the moment of the explosion. If Moyan of Wuxiang went over now, it would be useless. Whoosh! Moyan Wuxiang arrived at the center of the explosion in an instant. She stretched out her hand and pressed downwards. Waves of rippling energy gushed out. The rippling energy silently drilled into the explosive energy. A cool feeling spread out from the rippling energy. Immediately, everyone saw that the explosive energy began to shrink. Finally, it was completely annihilated in mid-air by Moyan Wuxiang's rippling energy. What happened to Zhuowen? The gazes of quite a number of people were thrown above, after the explosive energy was scattered. Immediately, they saw a figure surrounded by countless dragon figures slowly step forward. The dragon figures around this figure disappeared after the explosive energy was scattered, revealing a delicate and handsome face. Looking at this face, Evil Moon's gaze froze. Even many people below the battle stage were stunned. This person was none other than Zhuowen. He did not die under the explosive energy just now. At this moment, Zhuowen's face was pale. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Although he survived the explosion, his situation was not very good. Fortunately, Zhuowen's reaction was fast enough. After the explosion of the forbidden space barrier, he withdrew all of his mental energy and summoned the dragon domain. Only then did he protect himself from being torn apart by the terrifying explosive energy. Zhuowen, are you okay? Moyan Wuxiang asked with a little worry. Taking a deep breath, Zhuowen waved his hand. Immediately, his cold gaze fell on Evil Moon. He said coldly, Senior Evil Moon is really good. You saw that I was about to break through the forbidden space barrier, before the time it takes to burn an incense stick. Senior Evil Moon is so despicable to trigger the forbidden space barrier in advance to self-destruct. I have truly experienced such a despicable method. The moment Zhuowen said this, the gazes of the surrounding people turned increasingly strange as they looked at Evil Moon. Even Zhuowen, as the person involved, said this. Clearly, Evil Moon was the one who caused the premature explosion of the sky-restricting domain. Chapter 1105. Hesitation. Evil Moon also felt the disdain in the eyes of the people around him. His face suddenly became gloomy and he said, I have already said that the premature self-destruction was not my fault. It was your mental strength that triggered the explosion in advance. You dare to do it, but don't dare to admit it. You are indeed the top genius on the heavenly sovereign list, Zhuowen said sarcastically. The sarcasm in this sentence was extremely strong. Even though Evil Moon was quite thick-skinned, he could not hold it in. His eyes were extremely gloomy. Boom! Do you have to slander me, you little ant? In that case, I will teach you a lesson and let you know the price of slandering others. Evil Moon shouted coldly. A terrifying yuan power surged out, and a muffled thunder-like sound burst out from his body. Then, he stepped on the ground with his right foot and appeared in front of Zhuowen, as if he had teleported. Evil Moon, don't go too far. Just now, you said that after Zhuowen broke through the air-sealing domain, you would not make things difficult for him. Now you are attacking again. Do you have any shame? Moyan Wuxiang shouted angrily and stood in front of Zhuowen. Looking at Evil Moon in front of her, her beautiful eyes were full of anger. Evil Moon had broken his promise again and again, which had caused Moyan Wuxiang to feel a strong sense of disgust. I originally planned to let this ant go. Unfortunately, this guy does not know the immensity of heaven and earth and dares to slander me. If I do not teach him a lesson, where will the dignity of my Haoyu pavilion be? Get out of my way. Evil Moon's eyes were indifferent. A wisp of black light swept out from his right hand and immediately rushed towards Moyan Wuxiang. The terrifying palm wind cut through the air and actually made a sharp tearing sound. Moyan Wuxiang's beautiful eyes froze. She stretched out her jade-like hand and also pushed out a palm. The rippling yuan power went against the flow and fiercely collided with Evil Moon's right palm. Immediately, an extremely desolate explosion burst out. "Get out of my way," Evil Moon said indifferently. Yuan power surged out from his palm and was pushed to the extreme. Then, Moyan Wuxiang was pushed back by this terrifying surge of power. "Little ant, you only know how to stand behind a woman. In the past it was Chen Shui. Now it is Moyan Wuxiang. You are quite promising." After forcing Moyan Wuxiang, Evil Moon's cold gaze fell on Zhuowen. After spitting out these words, the fierce palm force did not change. Zhuowen's expression changed drastically when he saw the palm coming closer and closer. There was no doubt about Evil Moon's strength. Zhuowen was undoubtedly at a disadvantage against such an existence. Dragon domain. Zhuowen let out a low roar, and the countless dragon shadows around his body began to churn, forming an extremely terrifying layer of defense. Evil Moon's palm ruthlessly imprinted itself on the dragon shadow. Immediately after, an extremely tragic buzzing sound erupted. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan as he retreated in the void. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The power of the dragon domain was enough to withstand the attack of a low-level Emperor Realm expert. However, the dragon domain was broken when it was besieged by Supreme Jin and the other three. The 81 dragon auras were damaged to varying degrees. Therefore, its defensive power was not as good as before. Coupled with the self-destruction of the Forbidden Sky domain, it could be said that the dragon domain was now an arrow at the end of its flight. If it wanted to recover the power of the dragon aura in the future, it would need to be nurtured in the Jade Cauldron for a long time. You have some skill in your defense. Let's see if you can withstand my next attack." Evil Moon smiled coldly. He stomped his foot and blasted out another palm. The surface of this palm was covered with a strange black yuan power. The rich black color continued to circulate on the palm. Then it slammed heavily on the dragon domain. Kacha! Zhuowen's dragon domain crumbled under this palm. Zhuowen took several steps in the air and flew backwards. However, Evil Moon was like a maggot that stuck to Zhuowen's bones. The palm wind wrapped in black yuan power arrived on time like a venomous snake in the dark. "Evil Moon! You've gone too far. Stop it." Moyan Wuxiang rushed forward again. A ray of brilliance flashed out from the depths of his eyebrows. It turned into a huge drum that was as tall as a man. The surface of the drum was like a shuttle. It was obviously Moyan Wuxiang's armor soul. At this moment, Qingyin came to Moyan Wuxiang's side. She also released her armor soul. Qingyin's armor soul was an ancient zither. Her 5 fingers gently plucked on the strings. It turned into a rolling sound of killing. Buzz! Buzz! Moyan of Wuxiang and Soft Note looked at each other. One of them struck the drum, while the other strummed the zither. The thunderous sound of the drum and the clear and melodious sound of the zither blended with each other, forming a terrifying symphony that was as terrifying as a mountain. The moment this symphony resounded, the whole space fell into a stagnant state. The rolling sound waves rolled out like a tsunami. Many people under the stage stood far away and looked at this scene in shock. Using the way of music as an attack was an invisible way to kill people. Among the crowd, quite a number of people covered their ears in pain after hearing the sound wave. Blood flowed out of their 7 orifices. If it wasn't for someone pulling them further away in time, these people would have died under the sound wave. The way of music was invisible. If Moyan Wuxiang and Qingyin were to target the people present, there would be very few people who could survive under the sound waves. The two of you actually used your armor souls for Zhuowen. You're really bold. Looking at the power of the sound waves that pervaded his body, Evil Moon's right palm, which had originally struck out, paused. His eyes were filled with coldness. "If that's the case, then I won't be polite." Black Moon, mysterious sky. As he spoke, a black light gushed out from between Evil Moon's eyebrows. Immediately, a black crescent moon emerged behind him. As soon as this crescent moon appeared, the whole surrounding space dimmed, as if black clouds had covered the space. Plop! Plop! The moment this black moon appeared, the gravity of the whole space rose to the extreme. Many people around even knelt on the ground under this heavy pressure. Their eyes were filled with horror. What kind of armor soul was Evil Moon's? Its power was so terrifying. Just the heavy pressure that permeated the air made them involuntarily kneel on the ground in the distance. Of course, there were a small number of people who were stronger and didn't kneel under this heavy pressure. For example, Lu Qing. His right hand supported the black iron heavy spear, and his knees were slightly bent. His forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his legs were trembling. But he forced himself not to kneel. How can Evil Moon be so terrifying? Although Lu Qing knew that Evil Moon, who was ranked first on the Heavenly Master list, was definitely strong, he now realized that the gap between him and Evil Moon was so huge. It was like a chasm. Just this pressure alone made it difficult for him to stand, let alone fight Evil Moon. As soon as the Black Moon appeared, the armor souls of Moyan Wuxiang and Soft Sound were firmly suppressed. The terrifying sound of killing also came to an abrupt end. This guy has become stronger again? The two women resisted the terrifying pressure brought about by the Black Moon. Their beautiful eyes were filled with surprise when they looked at Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu's strength was also beyond their expectations. Evil Moon was usually alone, and his whereabouts were mysterious. Although he was ranked first on the Heavenly Master list, Moyan Wuxiang, who was ranked third, and Soft Sound, who was ranked fourth, had never fought with him. Only Di Ba, the great pavilion master of the Imperial Pavilion, had challenged Evil Moon. The result was that after Di Ba challenged Evil Moon, he went into seclusion and didn't come out. His seclusion lasted for a year. After he came out of seclusion, Di Ba didn't challenge Evil Moon again. Obviously, Di Ba had failed his challenge. Evil Moon's strength made Di Ba not have the courage to challenge him a second time. The gap between the two of you is too big. I advise you not to act rashly. Evil Moon glanced at Moyan Wuxiang and Soft Sound indifferently and ignored them. The two women had a strong background in the academy. Evil Moon couldn't deal with them for such a small matter. His target was only Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen was also under the heavy pressure of the Black Moon. The pressure was really terrifying. Even though Zhuowen's strength wasn't weak, he was still suppressed. The rules of the academy forbid killing, so don't worry. I won't kill you. Also, an ant like you doesn't deserve Chen Shui. I think you should know yourself. It's best if you don't pester Chen Shui in the future. After all, I, Evil Moon, will soon reach the Emperor realm. After entering the inner courtyard, Chen Shui will be mine. Evil Moon stood with his hands behind his back and looked down at Zhuowen indifferently. He continued, "Today, I will only cut off one of your arms as a reminder." After saying that, Evil Moon stretched out his right hand and grabbed Zhuowen's right arm, wanting to tear it off. River diagram. Zhuowen's pupil shrank, and he shouted in a low voice. Suddenly, the river diagram array in the Jade Cauldron was activated by him. A dragon's roar sounded, and then a dragon horse rushed out of the Jade Cauldron. It carried the river diagram on its back and stepped on the yellow river, rushing towards Evil Moon. Evil Moon obviously didn't expect this to happen. He snorted coldly and changed the momentum of his right palm. He slammed it on the dragon horse. Bang! The dragon horse was very strong. Evil Moon only felt that his right palm was pressed against a mountain. Thump, thump, thump. Evil Moon began to retreat, step by step. The dragon horse rushed forward, as if it didn't know fatigue. Moon hook. Evil Moon spat out these words indifferently. The Black Moon suspended in the void behind him swooped down like a hook and crushed the dragon horse's back. The Black Moon contained an extremely terrifying force. It pressed down on the dragon horse, causing it to kneel on the ground and roar angrily. Puff! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. He had just obtained the river diagram array and hadn't practiced it at all. He could only release the dragon horse's shadow on the river diagram. The power he could exert was extremely limited. It was reasonable that he was suppressed by Evil Moon. You have some skills, but they are still too weak for me. Evil Moon smiled coldly and ignored the dragon horse's shadow that was pressed under the Black Moon. He stepped on the ground and came to the sky above Zhuowen again. He slammed his palm again toward Zhuowen's right arm, intending to destroy it. Do I have to take out the killing oath-breaking knife? Chapter 1106. Violent abuse. The slaughtering abstinence violation saber was a high-grade emperor weapon. An emperor weapon of this level was a rare treasure, even in the academy. Once Zhuowen used such a treasure in the academy, it was hard to guarantee that it would not be coveted by many people. After all, there were far more monsters in the academy than in the outside world. Although he could not take action in the academy, once he left the academy, it was very likely that someone would be tempted to take action. At that time, many people would secretly take action. It was even possible that some old guys would be drawn out. Therefore, this was the reason why Zhuowen hesitated to use the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. Swoosh! Evil Moon's speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Zhuowen. His right hand, which was covered with black yuan power, turned into a black light and instantly fell on Zhuowen's right arm, intending to completely cripple it. I don't care. A strong wind swept over, and all the hair on Zhuowen's body stood up. He did not believe that Evil Moon would only cripple his arm. At that time, if he was in Evil Moon's hands, even his cultivation might be crippled. After all, it was not the first time that Evil Moon had broken his promise. How could Zhuowen trust this guy? Thinking of this, the hesitation in Zhuowen's eyes suddenly disappeared. With a flick of his right hand, he planned to release the slaughtering abstinence violation saber from the spirit ring. Boom! A terrifying pressure was immediately emitted from the spirit ring. Soon after, a clear and melodious blade hum resounded. The heavy pressure that was originally emitted from the Black Moon had actually completely disappeared under the effect of the pressure that had suddenly appeared around Zhuowen's body. Evil Moon's face stiffened, and his eyes were filled with uncertainty. This sudden pressure was actually able to break the heavy pressure of the Black Moon. It was really unbelievable. When the terrifying Emperor aura of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber appeared, all the students below the stage, who were suppressed by the Black Moon, were pleasantly surprised to find that the mountain-like heavy pressure had actually disappeared. The heavy pressure of the Black Moon has disappeared? With a puzzled look, everyone stood up and looked up at the battle stage. Then, everyone was shocked to find that a terrifying blood-colored pressure had unknowingly appeared in the sky. This blood-colored pressure had resisted the pressure of the Black Moon, so everyone felt that the heavy pressure on their bodies had disappeared. In fact, it did not disappear, but was offset by this blood-colored pressure. That blood-colored pressure was released from Zhuowen's body. Following the terrifying blood-colored pressure, everyone's eyes finally landed on Zhuowen, who was standing opposite Evil Moon, because the source of the blood-colored pressure was from Zhuowen, or more precisely, from the spirit ring's ring, Zhuowen, the spirit ring on his right hand. What is Zhuowen? What is hidden in his Zhuowen studio? What is in studio? At this moment, this was the only thought in everyone's mind, because the blood-colored pressure that was able to contend with the pressure of the Black Moon had surged out from Zhuowen's spirit ring. So everyone was extremely curious about it. Even Evil Moon's eyes were filled with curiosity. He was very clear about how terrifying the pressure of the Black Moon was. Even Moi and Wuxiang and Qingyin were suppressed by this pressure, which showed how frightening it was. However, the blood-colored pressure that suddenly appeared on Zhuowen's body was able to offset the pressure of the Black Moon. Obviously, this boy had some secrets. What is in the spirit ring? Evil Moon muttered in a low voice. He took a step forward and flew straight towards Zhuowen. Originally, he just wanted to teach Zhuowen a lesson, but now, the sudden appearance of the blood-colored pressure had completely aroused his curiosity. I must take a look at this thing. Looking at Evil Moon flying towards him, Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. With a thought, he planned to completely take out the slaughtering abstinence violation saber from the spirit ring. Swoosh! However, just as Zhuowen was about to take out the slaughtering abstinence violation saber, Evil Moon, who was originally in front of Zhuowen, had a drastic change in his expression. Subsequently, as if he had received an extremely powerful attack, he let out a groan and retreated dozens of steps. His eyes were filled with fear. Evil Moon's sudden change made Zhuowen suspicious. This was because Zhuowen had yet to take out the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. Why did Evil Moon suddenly retreat? Moreover, it was as if he was facing a great enemy. Of course, Zhuowen's suspicions did not last for long. A purple figure slowly descended in front of Zhuowen. This person had purple hair and purple eyes. His gaze was as deep as the sea, and his body was filled with an extremely dense and frightening aura. Surging mental energy gushed out, as if this person was surrounded by a vast ocean. Master Mufeng? Looking at the purple figure that had suddenly appeared, Zhuowen was initially startled. Soon after, he revealed a stunned expression. The blood-red pressure that had originally surged out from the slaughtering abstinence violation saber was also withdrawn by Zhuowen. He knew that with Master Mufeng's appearance, there was no need for him to take out the saber. Once Zhuowen's words were spoken, it immediately caused a huge commotion in the surroundings. Everyone's gazes were stunned as they stared at the purple figure that had appeared in front of Zhuowen. If they did not hear wrongly, did Zhuowen just call this person Master Mufeng? In the entire academy, there was only one person by the name of Mufeng, and that was the one and only heavenly master of Arcana Tower, Mufeng. He was in existence even more powerful than the headmaster, and even the headmaster had to be courteous and respectful to him. Such a person had actually appeared. Wasn't this a little too inconceivable? Could it be that Master Mufeng has come here for Zhuowen? After being shocked, everyone suddenly thought of a possibility. Their gazes fell from Master Mufeng to Zhuowen's somewhat frail figure behind him. What kind of existence was Master Mufeng? He was an expert that even the dean had to treat well. If such an existence had really come for Zhuowen, then Zhuowen's identity would be somewhat extraordinary. Evelmun's gaze flickered. He cupped his hands together and said with a smile, "So it's Master Mufeng. May I know the reason for Master Mufeng's visit?" Mufeng shot an indifferent glance at Evelmun. Soon after, he turned his head and said to Zhuowen, "Zhuowen, if you have completely grasped the river diagram array, you will be able to defeat this kind of trash in a single move." When these words were spoken, Evelmun's cupped hands instantly stiffened. This Master Mufeng had actually called him trash in front of everyone. This caused Evelmun to feel slightly angry in his heart. However, he did not dare to flare up. This was because Master Mufeng's status in the academy was too high. Furthermore, Master Mufeng's strength was far greater than his. Killing him would be as easy as killing an ant. Therefore, Evelmun did not dare to refute Mufeng. Zhuowen nodded respectfully and said, "I know. However, I have only obtained the river diagram array for 4 days, and have not had the time to comprehend it. Therefore," actually, Zhuowen was slightly puzzled about Master Mufeng at this moment. He was also slightly surprised that Master Mufeng would suddenly appear. Of course, Zhuowen did not think too much about it. After all, Mufeng was an arcane heavenly master. Perhaps he possessed some kind of powerful detection ability, which was why he was able to discover everything that had happened here. Haha, you are right. The time you have spent in contact with the river diagram array is indeed too short. Let me demonstrate to you how to use the river diagram array to make trash like this unable to resist. Grandmaster Mufeng also smiled. Soon after, he waved his sleeve. Immediately, the dragon horse that was being suppressed by the black moon suddenly let out a fierce neigh. A mighty force surged out from its body and shook off the black moon. Shortly after, the river diagram on the draconic horse's back turned into black and white light spots and rushed up into the sky. They formed a strange pattern. This pattern was the river diagram array. As soon as the river diagram array was formed, the space in the surrounding few kilometers seemed to be sealed. A profound aura flowed out, and the 5 senses of the people who had fallen into the array were instantly deprived, causing them to fall into a state of chaos. Evelmun frowned slightly. His strength was much higher than ordinary people. Within the river diagram array, he did not completely lose his 5 senses. However, they were weakened by countless times and became much slower. "Zhuowen, go and teach this fellow a good lesson." After using the river diagram array, Master Mufeng pointed at Evelmun, whose 5 senses had decreased by a lot, and said with a faint smile, "Thank you, Master Mufeng." Although he did not understand why Master Mufeng was so good to him, Zhuowen was naturally happy to have the opportunity to teach Evelmun a lesson now that he had the chance. Evil Moon relied on his strength to not only bully the weak, but he had also broken his promise many times. Zhuowen had long been unhappy with him. Now that he had the chance, how could he not take revenge? Whoosh! Zhuowen took a step forward and arrived in front of Evil Moon in an instant. He threw a punch at Evil Moon's face. "You ant, how dare you!" Evil Moon did not completely lose his five senses. Naturally, he could vaguely sense that Zhuowen was flying in front of him. He shouted angrily and raised his hand to block the attack. Unfortunately, his perception had been weakened too much. Zhuowen dodged Evil Moon's weak attack with a slight tilt of his body. Then he threw a punch at Evil Moon. Evil Moon groaned, and his right eye suddenly turned into a panda's eye. Zhuowen's left fist, which was ready to strike, mercilessly greeted Evil Moon's other eye, turning Evil Moon's two panda eyes into a pair. The extreme weakening of Evil Moon's perception caused him to be unable to resist Zhuowen's storm-like attacks. Moreover, Zhuowen was also quite sinister. Almost every punch was aimed at Evil Moon's face. In just a moment, Evil Moon's face had turned into a pig's head. At the same time, Zhuowen spared no effort to break Evil Moon's arms. This guy wanted to cripple his arms from the beginning. Now he was reaping what he sowed. After a series of beatings, Zhuowen finally stopped his attacks. After all, Evil Moon was a monstrous genius who ranked first on the Heavenly Master list. He could not kill him, let alone cripple Evil Moon's cultivation. Otherwise, the higher-ups of the academy would definitely blame him. Zhuowen understood this point, so he stopped before going too far. Seeing that Zhuowen did not kill him, Grandmaster Mu Feng nodded his head. Immediately, he waved his sleeve and immediately withdrew from the river diagram formation. The five senses of the people within a radius of a few miles also recovered after the river diagram was withdrawn. "Ah, Zhuowen, you bastard!" At the same time, an angry roar, which sounded like a pig being slaughtered, resounded. When everyone's eyes followed the sound, they saw a swollen pig's head. "This is Evil Moon." Everyone was stunned at first. Then they looked at the clothes on the pig's head. They immediately recognized the owner of the clothes. Wasn't that Evil Moon? Chapter 1107. Moyen Wuxiang Goodbye Uproar. The crowd below the stage burst into an uproar when they saw Evil Moon's pig-headed appearance. The #1 monster on the Heavenly Sovereign ranking, an existence that could kill a first-level emperor, had now turned into such an appearance. Everyone felt a little strange in their hearts. There were even quite a few people in the crowd who could not help but laugh. The laughter that rose and fell caused Evil Moon's gaze to become extremely cold. That bastard Zhuowen was definitely doing this on purpose. "Why? Are you still not going to scram? Zhuowen is a member of my arcane tower. I, Mu Feng, do not object to sparring. However, if someone wants to bully the weak, and even wants to kill him, don't blame me for being impolite." Mu Feng's voice was like thunder as it resounded across the battle stage. It was so loud that even the apathetic could hear it. Upon hearing Mu Feng's words, everyone's gazes were filled with a strange expression as they looked at Evil Moon. The latter's gaze turned cold as he felt a wave of humiliation in his heart. However, he could only glare viciously at Zhuowen before leaving unwillingly. Regardless of whether it was Mu Feng's warning or his current indecent image, it was not suitable for him to stay here. Hence, it was naturally best for him to leave. Seeing Evil Moon leave with his tail between his legs, many people in the viewing gallery were stunned. Soon after, their gazes once again gathered on Zhuowen, filled with fear. This fellow had truly hidden his strength well. To be able to get Master Mu Feng to step in for him, his position in the arcane tower was likely to be extremely high. Moreover, with Master Mu Feng backing Zhuowen, no one in the academy would dare to provoke Zhuowen in the future. Moyen Wuxiang and Qingyin looked at each other. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. Zhuowen had brought them too many surprises. Even Master Mu Feng had stepped in for him. It was truly unbelievable. "Let's go." On the spectator stand, Lu Qing's expression was extremely unsightly. He brought along Lu Xiang, who was still in a daze, as well as the other members of the Emperor Pavilion. When no one was paying attention, he hurriedly left the arena. He was truly afraid that this Zhuowen was too sensitive and would act against them. After all, Even Evil Moon had been turned into such a miserable state by Zhuowen, with the help of Master Mufeng, let alone them. So, it was naturally unwise for them to stay in this place for long. At the same time, Lu Qing secretly instructed Lu Xiang and the others not to provoke Zhuowen if there was nothing important in the future. Otherwise, they would have to bear the consequences. Many thanks for Master Mufeng's help this time. Zhuowen cupped his hands in a respectful manner. A trace of gratitude rose in his heart. After all, Evil Moon had given him too much pressure. If he hadn't used the slaughtering oath-breaking blade, it would have been impossible for him to block Evil Moon's attack. Moreover, even if Zhuowen had used the slaughtering oath-breaking blade and used the slaughtering oath-breaking blade technique, he was afraid that he would still be at a disadvantage. After all, Zhuowen's strength was too low. He couldn't use the full power of the slaughtering oath-breaking blade. If Evil Moon was a cultivator at the level of the Xiaoyao sect, Zhuowen was confident that he could defeat him. Unfortunately, Evil Moon wasn't. He was a terrifying existence that could kill a first-layer Great Emperor. Evil Moon only needed one move to kill a cultivator like the Xiaoyao sect. This was the difference between a genius and an ordinary cultivator. The former could often defeat ordinary cultivators who were at a higher level than them. Facing such a monstrous genius, even if Zhuowen had the slaughtering oath-breaking blade, the chances of him defeating Evil Moon were extremely slim. It seems that I have to break through to the Celestial Master Realm as soon as possible. At this moment, Zhuowen deeply felt that he wasn't strong enough. If he could break through to the Celestial Master Realm, his strength would definitely change. At that time, he might not be a match for Evil Moon, but at least he wouldn't be in such a difficult situation. Moreover, after breaking through to the Celestial Master Realm, Zhuowen would definitely be able to fight a first-layer Great Emperor with the slaughtering oath-breaking blade. However, it was unlikely that he would be able to kill a first-layer Great Emperor like Evil Moon. Of course, if Zhuowen could reach the peak of the Celestial Master Realm, he was confident that his battle strength wouldn't be lower than Evil Moon's. With the help of the slaughtering oath-breaking blade, it wouldn't be too difficult to defeat Evil Moon. Although it was a good idea, it was a pity that the reality was cruel. Zhuowen's cultivation was still too low. He had to break through to the Celestial Master Realm first. Master Mufeng waved his sleeves and said with a faint smile, "There's no need for that. I've taught you the river diagram array formation, so I can be considered half a master to you. Naturally, I can't watch you get bullied like this. Otherwise, wouldn't my reputation be ruined? Also, you should cultivate the river diagram array formation as soon as possible. Its power is definitely beyond your imagination. If you can completely cultivate the river diagram array formation, come find me again. I will accept you as my personal disciple and allow you to enter the 7th level to see my many years of work." Hearing those words, Zhuowen's eyes started to sparkle. Mufeng was an existence that was a heavenly arcana master. Naturally, all of his creations were rank 7 origin formations. These were existences that were comparable to Emperor artifacts. Furthermore, they were much easier to control than Emperor artifacts. Being able to see a rank 7 origin formation was quite a great temptation for many arcana masters. And Zhuowen was no exception. "Thank you for your teachings, Master. I will work hard to cultivate the river diagram array formation." Zhuowen nodded his head. The river diagram array formation was indeed powerful. Even if Master Mufeng didn't say anything, Zhuowen would still seriously cultivate it. However, what made Zhuowen somewhat puzzled was that Master Mufeng seemed to be somewhat impatient to let him cultivate the river diagram array formation. Perhaps it's because it's rare to find an arcana master who understands the river diagram array formation. Therefore, Master Mufeng is somewhat impatient for me to successfully cultivate it. Zhuowen muttered in his heart. "That's good. Since there's nothing else here, I'll take my leave first." Master Mufeng nodded his head. With a wave of his sleeves, he disappeared from the battle stage. Zhuowen looked at the empty space in front of him with a grave expression. Master Mufeng was indeed an arcana heavenly master. He came and went without leaving a trace. Zhuowen was simply unable to see how the former left. After Master Mufeng left, Zhuowen's gaze landed on Moyan Wuxiang. He smiled and said, Miss Wuxiang, thank you for your help this time. Moyan Wuxiang stole a glance at Zhuowen. Previously, because of the Qing Xian Empire's early departure, Moyan Wuxiang actually didn't dare to meet Zhuowen. She had been hiding behind the scenes to help Zhuowen. This time, if Evil Moon hadn't shamelessly dealt with Zhuowen, Moyan Wuxiang wouldn't have appeared in front of Zhuowen from behind the scenes. This was because she still had a trace of guilt in her heart. Looking at Moyan Wuxiang's expression, Zhuowen's smile grew even wider. He somewhat helplessly shook his head. He could also see that Moyan Wuxiang's heart was suffering at this moment. He came in front of Moyan Wuxiang, stretched out his hand, and gently patted her shoulder. He said, Don't worry, I don't blame you for the Qing Xian Empire's matter. Moreover, in that situation, Mangshi's method was right. You are not the Qing Emperor's opponent. Staying here will not help at all. The moment Zhuowen's right hand landed on Moyan Wuxiang's shoulder, the latter's delicate body trembled slightly. A trace of crimson appeared on her beautiful cheeks. She looked rosy, but there was a trace of a different kind of flirtatious feeling. Yes. Moyan Wuxiang nodded. Only then did she raise her head to look at Zhuowen's face, which was much more mature than before. Her heart couldn't help but start to beat wildly. Moyan Wuxiang felt a trace of a strange feeling in her heart when she saw her own reaction. A trace of a complicated expression appeared in her beautiful eyes. You are the sweetheart that Mu Qinxue yearns for day and night. You don't look handsome, and your cultivation is much worse than Mu Qinxue's. How did you make that little girl fall in love with you? A slightly teasing voice sounded. Qing Yin, who was standing beside Moyan Wuxiang, blinked her beautiful eyes and came in front of Zhuowen. She sized him up and curled her lips. Hearing this, Zhuowen felt a little helpless. Qing Yin's personality seemed to be a little too lively. Facing Qing Yin's question, Zhuowen helplessly shrugged and said, Things like feelings can't be explained clearly. Qing Yin nodded and said in a low voice, That seems to be the case. However, I still feel that with that little girl's arrogance, it is a little unbelievable that she would fall in love with a grassroots boy like you. Hearing Qing Yin's words, Zhuowen felt a little speechless. However, he did feel a little pressure. Mu Qinxue already had so many suitors in the outer courtyard. Perhaps there would be many in the inner courtyard. After all, in addition to Mu Qinxue's natural beauty, she also had the identity of the Saintess of the Burning Heaven sect. With such an identity, there would be very few young talents who would reject it. Therefore, there must be a lot of people who wanted to be Mu Qinxue's other half. Zhuowen, thank you for your understanding. Moyan Wuxiang also regained her calmness. The corner of her mouth revealed a rather brilliant smile. This is nothing. I, Zhuowen, treat you as a friend. Naturally, I won't misunderstand you because of this small matter. Moreover, you have helped me a lot. To be honest, I should be the one thanking you, Zhuowen said with a smile. Hearing Zhuowen say the word friend, Moyan Wuxiang's heart couldn't help but tremble. She said in a low voice, Friend? Brother Zhuo. Brother Zhuo. Suddenly, a few shouts came from not far away. Immediately, Emo Lingtian, Kanan and the other two came to Zhuowen's side. Brother Zhuo, are you okay? That Xiaoyu is really too hateful. When Kanan came in front of Zhuowen, she clenched her fists tightly and said angrily, However, Brother Zhuo, how do you know Master Mu Feng? Moreover, looking at your appearance, your mental energy has actually broken through to grade 6? Emo Lingtian looked at Zhuowen with some astonishment. He knew that Zhuowen's mental energy had reached grade 5 complete. After all, they were quite close friends with Zhuowen. He didn't hide some of Zhuowen's secrets. Yes, I broke through a few days ago in the Arcane Tower. I relied on the 6th floor of the Arcane Tower to luckily break through, Zhuowen said briefly. Emo Lingtian and the others nodded. Although Zhuowen didn't go into detail, they could all guess that Zhuowen's outstanding performance in the Arcane Tower had caught the eye of Master Mu Feng. Therefore, Master Mu Feng had personally stepped forward to help Zhuowen deal with Xiaoyu. The few of them chatted for a while more before leaving the arena. Many people in the surroundings were left staring at the departing figures. Chapter 1108. Jadeite Clear Pill. Do you know about the duel that took place in the arena 3 days ago? I know. Didn't Palm Tree of the Emperor Pavilion issue a challenge to Zhuowen? However, I didn't go. I wonder who won. You really missed a good show. That day in the arena, Zhuowen defeated Pom Pom. Later on, he took the initiative to challenge Lu Qing and defeated him in one fell swoop. What's even more unbelievable is that how you Pavilion's Evil Moon, Qing Yin Pavilion's Qing Yin, and Ink Fragrance Pavilion's Moyan Wushang all came. What? The 3 pavilion masters are all here? Could it be that they're here for Lu Qing? Immediately, someone began to ask questions. You're wrong. They are here for Zhuowen. Moreover, Evil Moon actually attacked Zhuowen. Guess what the result is? What's the result? Grandmaster Mufeng has appeared. He actually supported Zhuowen and taught Xiaoyu a lesson, causing Xiaoyu to lose all face. 3 days had passed since the duel in the arena. What happened in the arena that day spread throughout the entire academy like a tsunami. In a short period of time, Zhuowen's name reached its peak in the entire academy. Almost everyone was talking about Zhuowen. Not only had Zhuowen defeated Palm Master, he had even defeated Lu Qing, who was ranked 30th on the Heavenly Sovereign rankings. What was even more inconceivable was that Zhuowen had actually obtained the protection of Grandmaster Mufeng. Everyone knew that Zhuowen, who had Grandmaster Mufeng's support, would probably be able to do as he pleased in the entire academy. Therefore, many students secretly warned themselves that if they met Zhuowen in the future, they must not provoke him. Otherwise, they would not even know how they died. Zhuowen, who had caused the storm of public opinion, was quietly sitting cross-legged in his room. He had suffered serious injuries from the duel with Evil Moon. Therefore, he had been recuperating for the past 3 days. I'm afraid that Evil Moon won't let this go. Boy, after you leave the academy, you'd better be on guard against Evil Moon. In the corner of the room, the mystic soul ice butterfly lay quietly on the ground. The 2 antennae on its head drooped, and on its head sat a leisurely Xiaohei dog. Ever since the dark soul ice butterfly was born, Xiaohei had completely taken over the origin beast, and even boasted shamelessly that the dark soul ice butterfly was his mount. Zhuowen shrugged, and did not say anything about Xiaohei's shameless behavior. Perhaps it was because of Xiaohei's superior aura, but the mystic soul ice butterfly behaved submissively and was extremely tame. I know that. That's why I'm prepared to do my best to break through to the heavenly venerable realm. It's said that the first assessment for the Sky Capital Peak's disciple recruitment is to seize the island's source. I don't know much about the distribution of the islands in the Bitter Sea, so I need to understand it. Zhuowen nodded. Xiaohei rubbed his chin and smiled slyly. Boy, don't you have more than 2.5 million contribution points? The resources in the Divine Academy are quite abundant. With so many contribution points, you might be able to exchange for something that can help you break through to the heavenly sovereign realm quickly. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Xiaohei was right. The resources in the outer court were extremely abundant. As long as you had enough contribution points, you could exchange for good things that you couldn't find outside. Of course, these good things were only suitable for those below the Emperor Realm. The Emperor Realm warriors in the academy had basically entered the inner court, so how could they stay in the academy? It's time to take a look at the mission site. As he thought of this, Zhuowen took a step forward and opened the door. A ray of bright sunlight shone in, causing Zhuowen to comfortably close his eyes. Soon after, he walked out of the bamboo forest and headed towards the mission site. This is Zhuowen? He looks so young. Did he really defeat Lu Qing? That's right. It's him. However, we shouldn't provoke him. He has an existence like Master Mufeng behind him. What caused Zhuowen to feel helpless was that along the way, there were actually many people pointing at him and whispering to the people beside him. Although their voices were very soft, it was still heard by Zhuowen. Boy, you've really become famous this time. There are quite a few people who know you along the way. Xiaohei's teasing voice sounded in his ear, causing Zhuowen to shrug his shoulders and not reply. He also knew that the matter in the arena 3 days ago was indeed shocking enough. Now, everyone in the academy knew about it. Ignoring the hubbub around him, Zhuowen headed straight for the mission site. The flow of people at the mission site was still terrifying. Zhuowen's arrival naturally attracted the attention of many students, and they were pointing at him. Ignoring the surrounding students, Zhuowen directly went to the second level and walked towards Beixian's counter. At this moment, there were quite a number of students queuing up at Beixian's counter, waiting to submit their missions and exchange their rewards. Beixian crossed his legs and leaned back in his armchair, allowing the Chongsam lady in front of the counter to receive the students who were here to submit their missions. Looking at Beixian's appearance, Zhuowen shrugged his shoulders. He directly walked past the many students in the queue and arrived in front of the counter. Boy, you cut the queue. If you don't want to die, hurry up and line up at the back. Zhuowen's sudden actions immediately caused the dissatisfaction of the people in the queue. Zhuowen directly went to the counter as soon as he arrived. The crowd naturally felt very displeased in their hearts. There were even a few people who rolled up their sleeves and wanted to fight. Zhuowen directly ignored these students and lightly knocked on the counter. He looked at Beixian, who was leaning back in his armchair and squinting his eyes leisurely, and said, "Senior Beixian, there's a big business here. Why aren't you getting up? What is this boy doing?" He actually asked Senior Beixian to get up. Is he looking for trouble? Seeing this action of Zhuowen, the corners of the mouths of many people in the group curled into a cold smile. They stared at the former's figure with ridicule. As expected, when Zhuowen knocked on the counter, Beixian stood up abruptly. His gaze became slightly unfriendly. However, when he saw that it was Zhuowen, the unfriendliness in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by a look of surprise. "So it's you, Zhuowen? Why didn't you say so earlier? Come, let's talk inside." Beixian hurriedly pulled Zhuowen's right hand and warmly led him into the inner room behind the counter. This scene caused the people in the queue to be stunned. They had painstakingly queued here for half a day, but this boy was warmly welcomed by Beixian the moment he arrived. Moreover, he was even led into the inner room. The difference in treatment was too great. What did Senior Beixian say? I think he said that this boy is called Zhuowen. Could he be the Zhuowen who was in the limelight in the arena 3 days ago? Most likely. It's said that Zhuowen has Master Mufeng behind him. It's best that we don't offend him. Finally, someone noticed Zhuowen's name. Soon after, they recalled that Zhuowen, who had been the talk of the town during this period of time. Immediately, they connected the two together, causing everyone to feel embarrassed in their hearts. In the quiet inner room, Zhuowen and Beixian sat opposite each other. Between the two of them, there was an antique tea table with 2 teacups on it. Steam rose from the teacups. Evidently, the tea inside was still piping hot. "Zhuowen, kid, you're not simple. The academy has been filled with rumors about you for the past 3 days. I really didn't expect you to be related to Grandmaster Mufeng." Beixian raised his teacup and clicked his tongue in admiration. Zhuowen shrugged and said, "Senior Beixian, don't tease me. It's all due to luck that Master Mufeng took a fancy to me." Beixian shook his head. Naturally, he didn't believe Zhuowen's words. However, this was Zhuowen's secret, so he didn't ask too much. Instead, he changed the topic and said, "Zhuowen, didn't you say you have a big deal? Don't tell me you have something good? This time, I'm only here to exchange for something. However, I might need to spend a lot of contribution points this time." Zhuowen chuckled. Hearing this, Beixian's eyes revealed a trace of disappointment. However, he didn't show it. He smiled and said, "Why don't you tell me what you want to exchange for? After all, you're my regular customer. I, Beixian, will naturally do my best to help you. I need to exchange for something that can raise my cultivation to Heavenly Sovereign in a short period of time. Do you have it here?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. "Oh, something that can raise your cultivation to Heavenly Sovereign in a short period of time? Let me see." Beixian was startled. Soon after, he took out a palm-sized black metal box. With a tap of his right hand, a light screen surged out from the black metal box. There were rows of lists on the light screen. The list recorded the names of the items that could be exchanged. After about half an incense stick's time, Beixian stopped browsing. Instead, he waved his right hand, and 4 small light screens were drawn out. They landed in front of Zhuowen. "I've looked through them just now. These are the only 4 that meet your requirements. Take a look and see which one suits you best. Bei Xian said to Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded. His gaze gathered on the 4 small light screens in front of him. He looked at them attentively. Purple lightning engulfing pill. Extract the 9 heavens purple lightning that descended to the world. With various medicinal herbs as support, place all of the purple lightning into the medicinal herbs. Allow the medicinal herbs to fully absorb the purple lightning's energy and condense it into a pill. The pill contains extremely powerful purple lightning. It can widen the meridians with the purple lightning's energy. There is a 30% chance of pushing a golden sovereign to heavenly sovereign. It costs 500,000 contribution points. Red crystal mysterious fruit. A mysterious fruit that exists in the magma of a bottomless abyss. It is nurtured with the essence of earthly fire. There is a 50% chance of a golden sovereign breaking through to heavenly sovereign. It costs 800,000 contribution points. Mystic marrow silver horn. The essence of a powerful origin beast, the mystic marrow silver beast. It has an extremely powerful tempering effect for a golden sovereign. There is a 30% chance of a golden sovereign breaking through to heavenly sovereign. It costs 500,000 contribution points. Chapter 1109. Sun Moon Shuttle. Looking at the contents of the 4 small screens in front of him, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He could not help but inwardly suck in a breath of cold air. This was too expensive. The cheapest one cost 500,000 contribution points. Moreover, there was only a 30% success rate. Zhuowen was completely speechless. Bei Xian also saw the expression on Zhuowen's face. He smiled and said, Zhuowen, if you think it's too expensive, I can give you a discount. Zhuowen's eyes lit up as he asked, what kind of discount? I can give you a 10% discount. Think about it. Which one of these 4 herbs do you want? Bei Xian pondered for a moment before he smiled. Oh, you can actually give me a 10% discount. Zhuowen was surprised by Bei Xian's generosity. However, he could guess that Bei Xian was giving him such a discount because of Master Mu Feng. Zhuowen's gaze landed on the pure jadeite pill. Among the 4 herbs, only the pure jadeite pill had the highest chance of becoming a heavenly sovereign. It had a 60% chance of success. Naturally, Zhuowen would choose the pure jadeite pill. Have you chosen? Bei Xian asked with a smile. I have chosen. I'll take the pure jadeite pill. Zhuowen pulled out the small screen with the pure jadeite pill and chuckled softly. Oh, pure jadeite pill? Are you sure? Bei Xian raised his eyebrows. He was a little surprised by Zhuowen's choice. Although the pure jadeite pill had a 60% chance of becoming a heavenly sovereign, it was extremely expensive. It required 1 million contribution points. Even if he gave Zhuowen a discount, it would still cost 900,000 contribution points. This wasn't something an ordinary student could afford. I am sure. Senior Bei Xian, I will take the pure jadeite pill. Zhuowen smiled. Bei Xian nodded. He flicked his finger and took out a brocade box. He placed it in front of Zhuowen and said, this box contains the pure jadeite pill. Take a look at it yourself. With a wave of his right hand, Zhuowen grabbed the brocade box and opened it. Immediately, a surge of medicinal power gushed out like a volcanic eruption. Soon after, Zhuowen's gaze was fixed on the pill within the brocade box. The pill was emerald green in color, and its surface was engraved with incorporeal patterns. It looked rather complicated, and the medicinal energy that was being emitted from it made him feel refreshed. Closing the brocade box, Zhuowen nodded and said, Senior Bei Xian, there should be no problem with this pill. Thank you for choosing this gift for me. Bei Xian waved his hand and said that there was no need to stand on ceremony. After the 2 of them paid the 900,000 contribution points, Zhuowen continued, Senior Bei Xian, you should know about the Sky Capital Peak's recruitment of unnamed disciples, right? Bei Xian nodded and said, yes. It is said that the first condition is to obtain a trace of origin energy from the other islands in the Bitter Sea. This trace of origin energy is very beneficial to a cultivator. It is said that it can nurture one's spirit and raise one's aptitude. However, it will only start after half a year. Bei Xian seemed to have thought of something as he looked at Zhuowen and said, "You look like a newborn calf. You should be asking me for the map of the Bitter Seas Islands, right?" Zhuowen scratched his head. Bei Xian naturally saw his expression and nodded. He said, "You have found the right person. The map of the Bitter Seas Islands that I have is much more detailed than the other appraisers." As he spoke, Bei Xian took out a jade strip and passed it to Zhuowen. He continued, "I will give this map to you for free. The Bitter Sea is vast and boundless, and it is filled with danger. There are many islands in it. Some of the islands have harsh environments, and there are no signs of human habitation. Some of the islands are extremely prosperous, and they are not inferior to the excellent God Island. All right, if you want to go to the other islands, you will not be able to cross the Bitter Sea by yourself. You will need to be at least a mid-level martial emperor to cross the Bitter Sea." Bei Xian suddenly said. Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned. Bei Xian was right. The Bitter Sea was extremely terrifying. Anyone below the martial emperor realm would be courting death if they entered the Bitter Sea. Even low-level martial emperors would not dare to cross the Bitter Sea casually. Zhuowen would not be able to cross the Bitter Sea by himself and reach the other islands. "It seems like I will have to rely on the boundless sailboat. However, I might not be able to catch the boundless sailboat's flight. It is very inconvenient." Zhuowen thought back to the boundless sailboat that he had ridden in the past. However, the boundless sailboat didn't have a fixed flight schedule. Therefore, Zhuowen wasn't sure when the boundless sailboat would pass by the wonderful Spirit Island. "Zhuowen, actually, other than the boundless sailboat, there is another method that allows you to enter the Bitter Sea freely," Bei Xian suddenly said. "What is it?" Zhuowen's eyes lit up as he asked. Bei Xian smiled mysteriously. He flicked the light screen in front of him with his right hand. Instantly, a small light screen separated and landed in front of Zhuowen. In the light screen there was a small streamlined shuttle. The shuttle was extremely small and could only fit one person. This is the Sun Moon Shuttle. It was specially designed by Master Mufeng for students to cross the Sea of Misery. It is filled with complicated arcane runes, and it can withstand the strange destructive energy of the Sea of Misery. Moreover, it is not restricted by the powerful gravity of the Sea of Misery. Not only can it travel above the Sea of Misery, it can also flash within the Sea of Misery. Bei Xian introduced with a smile. "Oh, this Sun Moon Shuttle is so magical." Hearing Bei Xian's introduction, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. This Sun Moon Shuttle was a good item. With this item, one would be able to cross the Bitter Sea freely. However, he also knew that the price of this Sun Moon Shuttle was extremely high. "How many contribution points does this Sun Moon Shuttle cost?" Zhuowen probed. 5 million contribution points. In the academy, those who own this Sun Moon Shuttle are basically those who are ranked near the top of the Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. There are also the higher-ups in the academy who own it. Ordinary students do not have the financial resources to own this Sun Moon Shuttle. Bei Xian smiled. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded his head. Bei Xian was right. The price of this Sun Moon Shuttle was so expensive that ordinary students could not afford it. Even Zhuowen could not help but shudder when he heard the price. The price was indeed a little too high. "Zhuowen, do you have so many contribution points on you? If you don't, I can lend them to you temporarily." Bei Xian smiled meaningfully. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, "Of course I have them. Senior Bei Xian, please take out the Sun Moon Shuttle." "Oh, you really do have so many contribution points." Bei Xian was extremely surprised. Zhuowen had just spent 900,000 points to exchange for the Jadeite Clear Pill. Now he actually had 5 million contribution points to exchange for the Sun Moon Shuttle. However, thinking about what happened 3 days ago at the fighting arena, Bei Xian revealed a look of understanding. It seemed like Zhuowen had won quite a number of contribution points at the Emperor's cabinet. "I happen to have a Sun Moon Shuttle with me. I'll give it to you first." Bei Xian flicked his finger. An array of light surged out from his spirit ring. It landed in front of Zhuowen and turned into a streamlined shuttle. The Sun Moon Shuttle was about 3 feet long and 1 foot wide. There were countless complicated runes flashing on its surface. At the top of the shuttle, there was a transparent glass. Through the glass, Zhuowen saw a seat inside. Obviously, the control room of the Sun-Moon shuttle was inside the glass. Zhuowen, it's actually very simple to control the Sun-Moon shuttle. You only need to think of the coordinates of the island that you want to go to. Then, use your Yuan Qi to enter the Sun-Moon shuttle. When the time comes, the Sun-Moon shuttle will automatically fly out according to the coordinates in your mind. You don't need to spend any effort to control it. Beixian smiled. Looking at the Sun-Moon shuttle in front of him, Zhuowen revealed a look of satisfaction. The Sun-Moon shuttle was indeed extraordinary. He was a grade 6 lower-tier arcana master, but he actually couldn't recognize the runes on the surface of the Sun-Moon shuttle. He even felt that it was unfamiliar. As expected of the work of an arcana master, I actually don't understand it at all. Zhuowen shook his head. He was rather respectful of Mu Feng. To be able to create such a convenient Sun-Moon shuttle, Mu Feng's knowledge was indeed profound. Senior Beixian, many thanks for this. Here are 5 million contribution points. Please accept them. As Zhuowen spoke, he transferred 5 million contribution points to Beixian. Looking at the remaining contribution points counter, Zhuowen revealed a wry smile. The contribution points were spent really quickly. 5 million contribution points were spent just like that. After chatting with Beixian for a while, Zhuowen stood up and bid farewell. He walked out of the inner room and left the mission site under the envious gazes of many people. He headed towards the cultivation tower. He still had over 100,000 contribution points left. These contribution points were enough for Zhuowen to cultivate on the 10th floor of the cultivation tower for 3 months. Zhuowen planned to use these 3 months to rely on the pure jadeite pill to break through to the heavenly sovereign realm. After that, he planned to head to Azura Island. Master Mu Feng had already said that the 1,000-fold fossil was on Azura Island. Moreover, the honorary disciple assessment required one to obtain a trace of the island's source. Therefore, Zhuowen set his target on Azura Island. Whether it was the 1,000-fold fossil or the island's source, he could obtain them from Azura Island. After entering the cultivation tower, Zhuowen directly entered the private room on the 10th floor after 3 months. During this time, Zhuowen naturally attracted the attention of many students, and many of them pointed at him and whispered. Zhuowen was already used to the reactions of others. After entering the private room on the 10th floor, he closed the stone door and sat on the praying mat in the middle of the room. At the same time, Zhuowen also released the profound soul ice butterfly. He let it lie in the corner and absorbed the ice energy in the cultivation room to cultivate. Kid, you should find some powerful cold energy to let this little guy advance quickly. Xiaohei also appeared on the profound soul ice butterfly and said to Zhuowen with deep meaning. The profound soul ice butterfly also understood human nature. Naturally, it understood Xiaohei's words. Its drooping antennae immediately rose up. Its colorful eyes contained a trace of hope as it looked at Zhuowen. It even let out a low cry. Chapter 11:10. Heavenly Sovereign. The Bitter Sea was vast, and there were countless islands within it. Azura Island was one of the more famous islands aside from the Excellent Spirit Island. Of course, its influence was also extremely powerful. Although it couldn't be compared to the Excellent Spirit Island, the difference wasn't too great. Furthermore, Azura Island was located at the extreme north of the Bitter Sea. That location could give birth to powerful and terrifying cold qi. Therefore, Zhuowen thought of going to Azura Island to search for cold qi for the profound soul ice butterfly to cultivate. Although the northern part of the Excellent Spirit Island had a cold place like the Long Cold Mountain, the quality of the cold qi contained in the Long Cold Mountain was inferior to the ice energy in the cultivation tower. Therefore, Zhuowen didn't plan to search for cold qi for the profound soul ice butterfly on the Excellent Spirit Island. Let's use the pure jadeite pill to push my cultivation to the heavenly sovereign realm first. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He beckoned with his right hand, and a brocade box appeared in his palm. He opened it, and a surge of medicinal strength immediately gushed out, giving one a refreshing feeling. The medicinal efficacy of this pure jadeite pill is really strong. Taking a deep breath, Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he muttered to himself. Let's start refining this pill, Xiaohe said in a serious tone. Zhuowen nodded slightly. Soon after, he clenched his right hand. Immediately, the pure jadeite pill was crushed by him. It turned into a green-colored fog that enveloped Zhuowen's entire body. Zhuowen opened all the acupuncture points in his body and continuously sucked the green-colored medicinal essence into his body. Xiaohe and the profound soul-ice butterfly silently looked at the figure sitting cross-legged on the praying mat in the corner. A month later, there was still an endless stream of people in the living room on the 10th floor. Many figures were sitting cross-legged in the living room, rubbing against the ice and fire energy that flowed out from the cultivation room. Creak. The clear sound of a door opening sounded, immediately attracting the attention of everyone in the hall. Immediately, numerous gazes were shot over, only to see a young man slowly walking out from a private room at the front of the hall. His smooth black hair fell over his shoulders, while his eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. Everyone in the hall descended into silence when they saw this young man. There were even quite a number of people who took the initiative to open up a path in the middle of the hall. Their gazes were filled with respect as they stared at this young man. The young man glanced around the living room, lifted his feet, and walked straight through the living room, leaving the 10th floor. Once this person left, the somewhat stagnant atmosphere in the hall immediately became much more relaxed. The originally silent crowd also slowly erupted into a little noise. It's actually Zhuowen. I feel that Zhuowen's aura is much stronger than before. Could he have broken through? I have the same feeling. The pressure from Zhuowen's body is actually much stronger than it was a month ago in the arena. It seems that he has broken through to the Heavenly Sovereign level. This kid defeated Lu Qing on the Heavenly Sovereign ranking when he was at the peak of the Golden Sovereign level. Now that he has broken through to the Heavenly Sovereign level, won't his strength be even more terrifying? The discussion did not stop or dissipate because of the young man's departure. Instead, it became even more intense. Everyone was guessing whether Zhuowen had broken through to the Heavenly Sovereign level. As he slowly walked on the road, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly as he took a deep breath. A gentle breeze blew past, causing his jet-black hair to flutter, revealing the side of his slightly pale face. He looked extremely clean. At this moment, Zhuowen's aura was completely different from a month ago. He was calm and carefree. The effect of the pure jadeite pill is really good. It actually helped you break through to the Heavenly Sovereign level in a month. Xiaohe's voice sounded in Zhuowen's mind with some surprise. The most important thing is that I am already at the peak of the Golden Sovereign level. Coupled with the terrifying medicinal power of the pure jadeite pill, I can break through to the Heavenly Sovereign level in such a short time. Zhuowen smiled faintly. Xiaohe nodded and immediately continued. Since you have broken through to the Heavenly Sovereign level, when do you plan to go to Azura Island? 2 months later. After all, there are still about 5 months before the island's origin. I want to use this time to go to the Arcane Tower to ask my teacher for some knowledge about origin arrays. At the same time, I want to consolidate my initial Heavenly Sovereign level. Zhuowen pondered for a moment and said, That's fine too. The matter of going to Azura Island is not urgent. Before you go, you should take a look at the map of the Sea of Bitterness that Bei Xian gave you. When the time comes, you will know what to do. After Xiaohe finished speaking, he fell silent. Before going to the Arcane Tower, Zhuowen used the Communication Jade Amulet to inform Lingtian and the others. After learning that the 4 of them were working hard to prepare for the battle for the island's origin in 5 months, Zhuowen did not disturb Lingtian and the others. The path of martial arts was originally a personal matter. The help that one could receive from others was actually very limited. The path of others might not be suitable for one. Therefore, only by stepping on one's own path could one go further on the path of martial arts. After entering the Arcane Tower, Zhuowen did not encounter any obstructions. When many people saw Zhuowen, their eyes were filled with reverence. The news of Zhuowen's promotion to a 6th-grade arcanist had naturally spread throughout the Arcane Tower. Moreover, this child was highly regarded by Master Mufeng. It could be said that the current Zhuowen was like the sun at noon. Zhuowen did not pay attention to the other arcanists in the arcane tower, who were pointing at him. Instead, he directly walked towards the higher floors of the arcane tower. However, when he reached the 4th floor, he was stopped by a voice. "Brother Zhua." This voice was somewhat familiar. Zhuowen slightly tilted his head, and saw that at the center of the 4th floor, 3 figures were walking towards him. The person in the lead had a resolute face, and there was a trace of a smile in his eyes. The 2 people behind this person were a man and a woman. Their age did not exceed 25 years old. From the looks of it, they should be good friends of this person. Huang Can. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a trace of a smile. It turned out that the person in the lead was the arcanist Huang Can, whom he had met in the arcane tower. Huang Can was originally a 3rd-grade arcanist. Now that he was on the 4th floor, it was obvious that he had advanced. It had not been long since Huang Can had advanced to the 4th-grade initial success. His talent was indeed not weak. Congratulations! You actually advanced to the 4th grade in such a short time. Now, you can be considered an official disciple of Master, Zhuowen said to Huang Can with a sincere smile. Huang Can shook his head and said, "Actually, this is all thanks to you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have had the chance to become Master's disciple. I have never forgotten your kindness. Besides, my cultivation base is nothing compared to yours." Huang Can also recalled the recent rumors about Zhuowen. Even he felt as if a lifetime had passed. This Zhuowen had actually made it to the 6th floor, and forcefully advanced to the 6th grade initial success. "It's just a fluke. It's not worth mentioning." Zhuowen waved his hand and laughed. Huang Can naturally did not believe Zhuowen's words. However, he did not ask in detail. Instead, he said solemnly, "Brother Zhua, half a month ago, Lang Yao also successfully made it to the 6th floor. Today, he has officially stepped into the ranks of the 6th grade arcanists." "Oh, Lang Yao also made it to the 6th floor?" Zhuowen was a little surprised. Previously, when he had stripped the complete river diagram from the draconic horse's shadow on the 5th floor, the draconic horse had become extremely weak. Later on, Master Mufeng had redrawn the incomplete river diagram on the draconic horse to supplement the test on the 5th floor. For Lang Yao to be able to successfully make it to the 6th floor, his talent and strength were considered to be above average. However, Zhuowen did not mind. With the myriad derivation scripture, his mental strength was far stronger than other arcanists of the same level. He really did not take Lang Yao seriously. "Brother Huang Can, I still have some matters to discuss with Master. Do you want to follow me to the 6th floor?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. Huang Can shook his head and said, "No need. I am only a 4th grade arcanist, and am not qualified to enter the 6th floor. Fortunately, Master will occasionally come to the 4th floor to guide me. I am already satisfied with this." Hearing this, Zhuowen did not say much. After exchanging a few pleasantries, he left the 4th floor. "I actually met Zhuowen in person. I am so excited. Also, Huang Can, you are indeed so familiar with Zhuowen. Next time, we should get closer to Zhuowen." Once Zhuowen left, the man and woman standing beside Huang Can started to think. Their eyes were filled with excitement. Zhuowen was able to become a 6th grade arcanist at such a young age. His future was limitless. Building a good relationship with him would undoubtedly be beneficial for them. Huang Can shook his head and did not say anything. However, his eyes were filled with determination. His thoughts were naturally different from his 2 companions. He did not want to climb up to Zhuowen. Instead, he wanted to make Zhuowen his goal and become his motivation to move forward. Huang Can believed that although he might never be able to catch up to Zhuowen, he could continue to strengthen himself. Reaching the height that Zhuowen had reached was also a goal. On the 5th floor, Zhuowen stepped on the dragon horse's spine and entered the 6th floor under the envious gazes of the crowd. The scenery on the 6th floor was no different from before. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed. White fog lingered. It was like a beautiful scenery. "Zhuowen, you are here?" A rather amiable voice sounded. Soon after, Zhuowen saw Grandmaster Lan Miao slowly walking over in front of the white mist. The other 3 Grandmasters followed closely behind him. Among them, Grandmaster Tusida was accompanied by Lang Yao. Lang Yao stared at Zhuowen, revealing a somewhat provocative expression. Clearly, after Lang Yao had broken through to 6th grade, he had become much more confident in himself. He had an impulse to challenge Zhuowen, who was also at initial 6th grade. Zhuowen only smiled at Lang Yao's provocative gaze. He did not pay much attention to it. Instead, his gaze was placed on Master Lan Miao. Teacher, I plan to stay on the 6th floor for 2 months. During this period of time, I hope that teacher can fully guide me in the knowledge and refining of 6th grade yuan arrays. Zhuowen said respectfully. Chapter 11:11. Ultimate Sword Formation. Swoosh. 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 The ghastly cold sword lights were like stars in the night sky as they revolved around Zhuowen's body. When the fierce cold light illuminated Zhuowen's angular face, it actually seemed slightly ferocious. Monarch rank sword-shaped spirit treasure? When the new ultimate sword formation revolved around Zhuowen, Zhuowen noticed with a single glance that the earth rank sword-shaped spirit treasures in the core diagram of the sword formation had all been replaced with monarch rank spirit treasures. There were an entire few tens of monarch rank sword-shaped spirit treasures. This was an enormous amount of wealth. Moreover, the hundreds of sword-shaped spirit treasures outside the core diagram had basically been replaced with spirit treasures of a higher rank. It could be said that the aura emitted by the ultimate sword formation at this moment actually caused Zhuowen's heart to tremble. Needless to say, the might of the ultimate sword formation, that had been improved by Master Lan Miao, was countless times stronger than before. Lan Miao, you're really diligent. You actually improved this grade 5 origin formation to such an extent. I'm afraid you've invested quite a bit of things. Master Tisada suddenly spoke. Lan Miao waved his hand instead and said with a smile. After all, it's a ceremony for acknowledging a master. This can't be sloppy. Moreover, with Zhuowen's natural talent, he'll definitely advance extremely quickly in the future. If the origin formation isn't made better, it'll be very easy for him to be eliminated. Zhuowen revealed a trace of emotion when he heard this. Looks like Master Lan Miao has spent a great deal of energy and time on improving the ultimate sword formation. Zhuowen, this sword formation of yours is already a grade 6 origin formation. Give it a name. Master Lan Miao smiled as he spoke to Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded and pondered for a moment before saying, this sword formation was originally called the ultimate sword formation. Now that its grade has increased, it naturally can't use its original name. Then let's call it the ultimate sword formation. This name isn't bad. Master Lan Miao smiled and continued. Zhuowen, there's one more thing that I need to remind you of. The core diagram of your sword formation has been completely changed by me. I've also erased the 5 sword moves contained within it and added in the 3 sword profundities. That sword array was originally a grade 5 origin formation. To the current me, it's actually not that useful. Let me take a look at this new sword move. Zhuowen smiled as his consciousness entered the array diagram of the ultimate limitless sword formation. Naturally, he could see the sword moves in the array diagram at a glance. Sword Fire Profound, Sword Thunder Profound, Sword Thunder Profound. Zhuowen murmured the 3 great sword profoundness of the ultimate limitless sword formation. The Sword Fire Profoundness used the sword as a medium to ignite the flames, erupting with flames that could burn the heavens. With a single sword strike, the heavens would be incinerated. The profound meaning of Sword Thunder used the sword as a medium to guide the 9 heavens' profound thunder, turning it into thunderbolts that filled the sky. When the sword struck out, the profound thunder would descend from the sky. As for the Sword Thunder Fire Profoundness, it was the combination of the Sword Fire Profoundness and the Sword Thunder Profoundness. With a single sword strike, thunder and fire would intertwine. The combination of the heaven-incinerating fire and the thunderbolts that filled the sky would form a terrifying thunder fire that possessed overwhelming might. These 3 great sword profoundness are extremely terrifying. You just have to make good use of them. However, using them will consume an extremely large amount of your mental strength. Oh right, I can sense that your body has the aura of various types of earth fire. Apart from igniting the flames of heaven and earth, the sword fire profoundness power will will also increase if you add in the earth fire. Master Lan Miao suddenly said to Zhuowen with a smile. Oh, the earth fire can actually increase the power of the sword fire profoundness? Zhuowen's eyes lit up as he nodded slightly. With Zhuowen's current combat strength, the earth fire wasn't of much help to him. Even if he used the fire fusion art to fuse 8 types of earth fire, the help it gave him was extremely limited. Therefore, Zhuowen rarely used the earth fire in his body during normal battles. But now, the sword fire profoundness in the ultimate limitless sword formation could actually fuse with the earth fire and increase its power. For Zhuowen, this was really killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Thank you, Master. Zhuowen cupped his hands sincerely and said, the power of the ultimate limitless sword formation had far exceeded Zhuowen's expectations. He knew that it was all thanks to Master Lan Miao, who had spent a lot of energy and time on it. Master Lan Miao smiled and said, we are both master and disciple. Why are you treating me as an outsider? Zhuowen nodded and firmly remembered Master Lan Miao's kindness in his heart. Stay with me for 2 months first. If you have any questions, you can ask me as much as you want. I will answer them for you one by one. Master Lan Miao flicked his sleeve and planned to bring Zhuowen to his residence on the 6th floor. Wait, a voice rang out. Immediately, Zhuowen and Master Lan Miao turned their heads in confusion. They saw Lang Yao, who was standing beside Master Tishita, suddenly step forward. He stared at Zhuowen with bright eyes and said, Zhuowen, you and I are both initial grade 6 Arcana Masters. Why don't you have a match with me? Master Tishita and Master Lan Miao both frowned when they heard this. Clearly, they did not expect Lang Yao to suddenly step forward and challenge Zhuowen. Master, I only planned to spar with Zhuowen. It was a sudden idea. I hope Master won't blame me. Lang Yao looked hopefully at Master Tishita beside him. Master Tishita nodded as he looked at the disciple he was most proud of. Then he looked at Master Lan Miao and said, Lan Miao, what do you think? You won't refuse a spar between juniors, right? Master Lan Miao looked at Zhuowen and said, it depends on Zhuowen. If he agrees, I won't have any objections. Master Tishita nodded. He looked at Zhuowen and asked, Zhuowen, what do you think? If it's a mental energy spar, it's fine. Zhuowen said in all seriousness. Lang Yao smiled when he saw Zhuowen agree. He said, Brother Zhuowen, you are indeed straightforward. Since that's the case, the 2 of you can have a friendly spar here. Master Tishita laughed out loud. Soon after, he waved his sleeve. Terrifying mental energy surged out and formed a mental energy platform that was several feet tall in front of him. Lang Yao was excited. He took a step and leaped onto the mental energy platform. He looked at Zhuowen provocatively. Zhuowen shrugged and also leaped onto the other side of the platform. His face was indifferent and his eyes were calm. Brother Zhua, you have to be careful. As Lang Yao spoke, a terrifying mental energy surged out like a tsunami. It turned into an invisible giant hand and rushed towards Zhuowen. On the other hand, Zhuowen was neither hurried nor slow. A wave of mental energy similarly gushed out, forming another large hand that greeted the other. Immediately, the 2 large mountain-like hands collided in midair, erupting with a muffled sound. A ripple-like aftershock spread out, tearing through the air, and emitting a slightly ear-piercing screech. Below the platform, the 4 masters stood quietly. Their gazes were focused on the 2 giant mental energy hands that were constantly clashing on the platform. I wonder who will win. Great Master Tian Yi and Great Master Wukong muttered softly. Although Master Tishita and Master Lan Miao looked calm, it could be seen from their slightly clenched hands that their hearts were not as calm as they looked on the surface. Lang Yao was the disciple that Master Tishita was most proud of. Zhuowen was Master Lan Miao's only disciple. The spar between the 2 of them carried the dignity of the 2 masters. Lan Miao, your disciple advanced to grade 6 lower realm, half a month earlier than Lang Yao. Now, the 2 of them seemed to be evenly matched. Master Tishita suddenly said to Master Lan Miao in a slightly provocative manner. However, as soon as Master Tishita said that, a dull sound was heard. Then, the giant hand formed by Lang Yao's mental energy on the platform suddenly collapsed. The latter kept retreating with a pale face. On the other hand, Zhuowen stood still on the platform like a mountain. Brother Lang Yao, do we still need to compete? After destroying Lang Yao's mental energy hand, Zhuowen did not show any arrogance. Instead, he stared at Lang Yao and smiled faintly. Zhuowen, who cultivated the myriad evolution scripture, had mental energy that could not be compared to arcanists of the same level. It could be said that Lang Yao had made the wrong choice by challenging him. His defeat was an established fact. Zhuowen did not feel proud of this victory. Instead, he was extremely calm. Master Tishita's voice came to an abrupt halt. His gaze was slightly stiff as he looked at Lang Yao, who was still defeated on the platform, and an embarrassed smile appeared on his face. Lang Yao's pale face regained some color. He smiled bitterly and said, Brother Zhua, no wonder you were able to succeed on your first attempt at the Dragon Horse Challenge. Looks like it wasn't a fluke. I, Lang Yao, am sincerely convinced. As he spoke, Lang Yao jumped off the platform and returned to Master Tishita's side in silence. After being defeated by Zhuowen twice, Lang Yao could not help but feel a sense of defeat. Teacher, let's go, Zhuowen said softly as he returned to Master Lan Miao's side. Master Lan Miao smiled and nodded. Then, he cupped his hands towards Master Tishita and the other two and said, Senior brothers, Lan Miao will take his leave first. As he spoke, Lan Miao and Zhuowen turned around and left, leaving Master Tishita and the other three staring blankly at their backs. This Zhuowen is not simple. Although his mind power is only at the initial 6th level, the mind power contained in his body is extremely vast, far surpassing that of arcanists of the same level. I really don't know how this little guy cultivates. Master Tian Yi was slightly envious. Perhaps this is what a true monster is like, Master Tishita said with a sigh. Then, he left with Lang Yao and returned to his own residence. Master Lan Miao's residence was rather elegant. It was an emerald green bamboo house with a courtyard of a few miles. The courtyard was surrounded by mottled bamboos that stood tall and did not fall. The courtyard was surrounded by fake mountains and streams in the mountains. Entering such an environment would always give people a sense of tranquility. Zhuowen, for the next 2 months, you will study the origin formation method in this courtyard. However, I heard that you are also a cultivator. I wonder what level your cultivation has reached. Master Lan Miao suddenly asked Zhuowen when they arrived in the courtyard. Zhuowen was stunned. However, he did not hide it and said, I was lucky to have broken through to the early Heavenly Master stage today. Oh, you have actually reached the early Heavenly Master stage? Your martial talent is also very terrifying. Your Dantian contains essence energy, and your Naiwan Palace contains mental energy. Have you ever thought that these two completely different types of energy can combine with each other to form an even more powerful energy? Master Lan Miao suddenly said with a grin. Chapter 11-12. Xiang's breakthrough. Can mental energy and origin power really combine and fuse into a new energy? Zhuowen raised his head slightly, stared at Grandmaster Lan Miao, and asked doubtfully. Grandmaster Lan Miao nodded and said, It is indeed possible to combine them. Mental energy is an intangible energy, while origin power is a material energy. If the two truly combine, the new energy produced will actually be very powerful. However, regarding this point, I've only heard of it. Has no one in the Divine Academy ever succeeded? Zhuowen continued to ask. Grandmaster Lan Miao smiled bitterly and said, The people in the Arcane Tower are basically all arcanists. There are very few martial cultivators. Even if there are, their martial cultivation is far inferior to mental energy. The origin power and mental energy in a person's body are not equal. It is very difficult to successfully combine these two types of energy. But you are different. Your martial cultivation and mental energy are almost the same. The two types of energy have reached a certain balance in your body. You can try to combine these two types of energy. Zhuowen was startled. He frowned and said, Teacher, this kind of fusion process should be relatively dangerous, right? If I don't have some experience, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to succeed. Grandmaster Lan Miao nodded and said, I'm only giving you a reminder. After all, Your martial cultivation and mental energy are both very strong. If you can combine these two paths, your path will certainly be very long. Hearing that, Zhuowen nodded. He was currently completely at a loss about the fusion of origin power and mental energy. However, Grandmaster Lan Miao's reminder gave him a new direction. If he could really encounter something related to the fusion of origin power and mental energy in the future, he would certainly pay more attention to it. Time passed extremely quickly. 2 months had already passed. During these 2 months, Zhuowen had basically been training his mental energy and studying origin arrays at Grandmaster Lan Miao's residence. And the speed of Zhuowen's progress was so fast that even Grandmaster Lan Miao was quite surprised. It could be said that Zhuowen was simply the kind of person who could understand with just a little explanation. He only needed a little explanation to be able to see the big picture. His comprehension ability was extremely powerful. After witnessing Zhuowen's terrifying comprehension and comprehension ability, Grandmaster Lan Miao became more and more satisfied with Zhuowen. He also put more effort into teaching the origin array, hoping to let Zhuowen understand more. In 2 months, Zhuowen's failure rate when refining a grade 5 array had increased to almost a 100% success rate. As for the grade 6 array, Zhuowen had also grasped the crux of it. His success rate had also increased rapidly from the original 10% to the current 30%. A 30% success rate was extremely high for a grade 6 lower-tier arcanist. After all, for some arcanists of this level, the success rate of refining a grade 6 origin array was probably only 10% to 20%. Grandmaster Lan Miao was also quite satisfied with Zhuowen's success rate. He knew that as long as he gave Zhuowen a certain number of array diagrams and 3 sets of sufficient materials, the success rate of refining a grade 6 origin array would be very high. Zhuowen, your current success rate is almost close to that of a grade 6 upper-tier arcanist. Your talent in refining origin arrays is definitely the strongest I've ever seen. Grandmaster Lan Miao smiled with great relief. Zhuowen waved his right hand, and the flames surrounding him immediately withdrew. He slowly got up and looked at Grandmaster Lan Miao with a smile. All of this is thanks to teacher's earnest teachings. Otherwise, this disciple wouldn't have made such great progress. Seeing Zhuowen's neither arrogant nor discouraged attitude, Grandmaster Lan Miao nodded. His eyes were full of gratification. 2 months have passed. I think the important matter you mentioned is about the recruitment of nominal disciples of Sky Capital Peak. Right? Grandmaster Lan Miao said with a smile. Yes. So this disciple plans to go to other islands to seize the island's origin and meet the first requirement of being a nominal disciple. Zhuowen nodded. The competition for the island's origin every time is extremely fierce. You should be careful along the way. But which island are you going to this time? Grandmaster Lan Miao nodded and suddenly asked. Azura Island. Zhuowen didn't conceal anything and answered truthfully. Grandmaster Lan Miao's face suddenly froze. He immediately frowned and said, You're choosing Azura Island? Let me remind you that Azura Island is the most chaotic island among the many islands in the Sea of Bitterness. It pursues the law of the jungle. Everyone survives and calculates amidst slaughter and blood. It's a very dangerous island. Before setting off, Zhuowen had already investigated Azura Island. This Azura Island was indeed as Grandmaster Lan Miao had said. It was extremely chaotic. There were no rules here at all. As long as you were strong enough, you could kill and rob as you wished. There were no rules to speak of. Moreover, many outlaws of the eastern lands entered Azura Island because they were wanted by many forces. They obtained the protection of Azura Island's island master, Azura Li Di. This caused the originally chaotic Azura Island to become even more chaotic. It could be said that Azura Island was a synonym for blood and evil. In the entire Sea of Bitterness, it was a synonym for terror. Therefore, when Zhuowen decided to go to Azura Island to seize the island's origin, Grandmaster Lan Miao revealed a dignified expression. Every time the island's origin was seized, Azura Island would always suffer the most casualties. This was because when the people of Azura Island attacked, they would either die or be injured. Even when facing the weak, they wouldn't hold back. Master, This disciple knows. However, Azura Island has the whereabouts of the thousand-fold fossil, so I have no choice but to go. In addition, the island's origin is about to erupt, so this disciple can only choose Azura Island. Zhuowen lowered his head. Seeing Zhuowen's appearance, Grandmaster Lan Miao also understood Zhuowen's decision. He didn't say anything else and said, "Since that's the case, Master will not influence your decision. However, you must be careful. In a place like Azura Island, you must be ruthless and merciless. Otherwise, the one to suffer will only be yourself." "Master, rest assured. This disciple understands." Zhuowen nodded. Grandmaster Lan Miao nodded. He crossed his hands behind his back and entered the bamboo house with his back facing Zhuowen. As for Zhuowen, he stood quietly in the courtyard for a quarter of an hour. Then with a wave of his sleeve he left. After leaving the arcane tower, Zhuowen directly walked out of the academy. As he strolled through the main city streets, a thunderous sound resounded from a certain corner of the main city. Then terrifying dark clouds filled the sky, causing the main city to instantly fall into darkness. That's the Emperor's Star? When this phenomenon appeared, countless people on the streets raised their heads to look at the sky. Soon after, they saw a huge hole being pierced through the dark clouds. 9 purple-colored stars descended from the huge hole. Strangely, the 9 purple-colored stars were burning with purple-colored flames. Someone broke through to the Emperor realm. Let's go and take a look. When the 9 Emperor stars finally descended on the main city, the entire main city was shaken. It had been a while since someone broke through to the Emperor realm on Excellent Spirit Island. Today someone actually did so. No one would miss this opportunity to see. It's Xiang's aura. I'm afraid the one who broke through to the Emperor realm is Xiang. Xiao Hei's voice sounded in Zhuowen's mind. Xiang. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He laughed loudly and stepped into the void. Following the flow of people in the main city, he flew toward the 9 purple stars. After not seeing each other for almost a year, Xiang Tianzuan actually made a breakthrough. Zhuowen also knew that after Xiang broke through to the Emperor realm, he would be of great help to him. He couldn't help but reveal a trace of joy in his heart. The entire Excellent Spirit Academy was attracted by the scene of the 9 Emperor stars descending. When the students realized that the Emperor stars weren't descending in the direction of the academy, there was a trace of doubt in their eyes. Could it be that the one who broke through to the Emperor realm wasn't a genius from their academy? Was it a cultivator from outside the academy? With this trace of doubt, countless students in the academy turned into afterimages and flew toward the Emperor stars. In the depths of the academy, in a rather elegant courtyard, under a lofty pine tree, there was a chessboard with intertwined lines. 2 old men were playing chess. One of the old men was dressed in a white robe and had a benevolent appearance. He was the dean of the outer academy. The other man was dressed in a gray robe. His hair was white, and his eyes were long and narrow. He was the elder in charge of Sky Capital Peak's recruitment of registered disciples. Elder Wuxia, looks like I'm going to win this round. The dean laughed. The gray-robed elder was a little vexed. Bai Yan, your chess skills are as exquisite as ever. I've been practicing hard for decades, but I'm still not your match. Behind the gray-robed elder stood 6 young figures. These 6 people were the disciples of Sky Capital Peak, who had followed Elder Wuxia here. Boom! Suddenly, the Emperor stars descending from the sky attracted the dean and Elder Wuxia's attention. Someone broke through to the Emperor realm? And judging from the direction, it doesn't seem to be in your academy? Elder Wuxia was startled at first, then asked curiously. The dean was puzzled. He hadn't expected someone from outside the academy to break through to the Emperor realm at this time. But judging from the power of the stars descending from the sky, it should be an ordinary Emperor realm cultivator. If Xiaoyu from the outer academy can break through to the Emperor realm, the phenomenon he produces will be much stronger. Elder Wuxia only glanced at him once before withdrawing his gaze, disinterested. There was no lack of Emperor realm cultivators in the inner court, especially ordinary ones like these. If some monstrous genius had broken through to the Emperor realm, Elder Wuxia might have been interested. After all, monstrous geniuses had endless potential. Once they broke through to the Emperor realm, their battle prowess would soar. They would be much stronger than other Emperor Realm cultivators of the same level, and even more monstrous geniuses would be able to challenge those of a higher level. The 6 Sky Capital Peak disciples standing behind Elder Wuxia also had disdainful looks on their faces. When the 6 of them broke through to the Emperor Realm, which of them did not experience a phenomenon that was not much stronger than this? Therefore, they merely revealed a trace of astonishment and no longer paid any attention to this matter. Chapter 11:13. Out to the sea, the purple figure sat cross-legged in the middle of the courtyard. 9 huge purple stars floated above his head. A surge of star power poured out, causing the entire courtyard to sink into a stagnant pressure. Not far from the purple figure, there were 4 other figures standing quietly, silently staring at the purple figure in front of them. I didn't expect Xiang to successfully break through to the Emperor Realm. White Brow Heavenly Master looked at the purple figure with envy and murmured in a low voice, "We have to thank Master and Master Long for this. They reconstructed our physical bodies and changed our martial aptitude. They even brought us to the main city of Excellent Spirit Island. That's why our cultivation improved so quickly." Yellow Jade Heavenly Master also smiled. Although Heavenly Venerate Shiyu and Heavenly Venerate Moon and Heavenly Venerate Moon didn't say anything, it was obvious from their eyes that they were no longer dissatisfied with their decision to become Zhuo Wen's servants. Instead, they felt somewhat fortunate. If it hadn't been for Zhuo Wen and Little Black, they wouldn't have been able to progress further on the martial path, and even have the chance to enter the martial Emperor Realm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless figures gathered around the courtyard. These were all cultivators from the main city and the academy. Their gazes were focused on Xiang in the courtyard, their eyes filled with surprise. On the Excellent Spirit Island, the chances of cultivators outside of the academy breaking through to the Emperor Realm was very low. Perhaps, it would be rare to see one in a few decades. After all, Grandmaster Mu Feng's Qi gathering array was the core of the academy. The Qi in the academy was the densest in the entire Excellent Spirit Island. In addition, some of the more talented cultivators were generally recruited into the academy. Those who stayed outside of the academy were ordinary. Therefore, the chances of cultivators outside of the academy breaking through to the Emperor Realm were very small. Therefore, when Xiang broke through to the Emperor Realm, he attracted the attention of so many people in the main city. White Brow Heavenly Master and the other 3 frowned slightly when they felt the terrifying flow of people around them. However, they didn't do anything to drive them away. Although the 4 of them were strong, facing such a terrifying flow of people was simply courting death. Naturally, they wouldn't do anything that would anger the crowd. Boom! An even more powerful wave of air surged out from Xiang's body. Then Xiang slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, his pupils were covered by a touch of purple. A vast emperor's aura gushed out from his body, causing many people around him to tremble in fear. Thud thud thud. When Xiang opened his eyes, a figure suddenly walked out from the crowd in the courtyard. This person had a fair complexion and shoulder-length black hair. There was a hint of a smile on his lips as he walked step by step towards Xiang. What is this kid doing? He's actually planning to walk straight towards that emperor. The young man's unconventional actions immediately attracted everyone's attention. When they discovered that he was actually heading straight for Xiang, strange expressions appeared in their eyes. This young man's aura was only at the early stage of the Heavenly Venerable Realm, yet he swaggered towards Xiang. Was he seeking death? Clearly, everyone felt that this young man's actions were undoubtedly a form of provocation, and the consequences of an Empyrean provoking an Emperor Realm martial artist were undoubtedly extremely disastrous. Isn't this kid looking for death? He actually dares to swagger towards this great Emperor Realm cultivator. Many people revealed a mocking smile, sneering coldly. It's Zhuo. Many of the people in the crowd were students of the academy. They also recognized the young man who swaggered out from the crowd. First, they exclaimed in a low voice, then revealed gloating expressions. Zhuo Wen's reputation in the academy was too great, and he was too outstanding. It was unknown how many people envied and hated Zhuo Wen. For such an outstanding genius to be defeated in front of them, These students were extremely happy to see it. Thud thud thud. When Zhuowen was about 10 steps away from Xiang, he stopped and quietly stared at the purple figure in front of him. Xiang slowly stood up and also looked at Zhuowen. Their eyes met. And for a moment, the surrounding atmosphere became extremely oppressive. Many people in the crowd held their breaths and quietly watched the two people standing opposite each other. Everyone without exception revealed a mocking expression, because in their opinion, this Emperor Realm martial artist would definitely be angry and then tear this arrogant Empyrean martial artist to pieces. Just when the atmosphere was extremely oppressive, Xiang suddenly laughed loudly and knelt on one knee on the ground, saying, "Greetings, Master." "Greetings, Master." The moment Xiang knelt down, Whitebrow Empyrean Master, who was standing at the side of the courtyard, also knelt down, his voice full of respect. The moment Xiang's words came out, the surrounding people who originally wanted to see Zhuowen make a fool of himself fell into a state of shock. They originally thought that this Emperor Realm expert would show anger and then teach this Empyrean martial artist a lesson. But now, the result in front of them was far beyond their expectations. Not only did this Emperor Realm expert not attack, but he knelt on the ground and called this Empyrean martial artist Master. This world was too crazy. Was there a mistake in the Emperor Realm expert calling an Empyrean martial artist Master? Under the stunned expressions of the crowd, Zhuowen nodded and said, "Very good. Xiang, you didn't let me down. You successfully reached the Emperor Realm in a year. Very good." At the same time, Zhuowen looked at Whitebrow Empyrean Master and the other three with a look of praise, because the other four had also improved a lot and had reached the peak of Empyrean Master. "We still can't compare to Master." Xiang laughed embarrassedly. He keenly felt that Zhuowen's cultivation had reached the early Empyrean Master. He remembered that a year ago, Zhuowen was only at the Sovereign Realm. Now he had crossed 2 levels and entered the Empyrean Master Realm. It was truly shocking. In addition to Zhuowen's strange and unpredictable combat strength, although Xiang had reached the Emperor Realm, he probably wouldn't have the slightest advantage against this Zhuowen in front of him. "Xiang, how about coming with me to Azura Island?" Zhuowen suddenly said. Xiang was startled and immediately said respectfully, "Master's orders, Xiang will naturally obey." "Master, what about us?" Whitebrow Empyrean Master and the other three hurriedly came over and stared at Zhuowen with anticipation. Azura Island is filled with danger and is extremely chaotic. It's not a good place. The 4 of you shouldn't go for the time being. Zhuowen indifferently refused. Hearing this, Whitebrow Empyrean and the other 3 all revealed disappointed expressions. They had stayed in the main city for long enough. In fact, they also wanted to follow Zhuowen out to see the brilliance of the outside world. However, since Zhuowen didn't allow it, they could only helplessly agree. "Let's go." After saying that, Zhuowen brought Xiang and left the courtyard under the dumbfounded gazes of everyone. At the edge of the island, there was a rather large pier. At this moment, the huge pier was filled with people like a dragon, and there was an endless stream of people. Next to the pier was a tower-shaped building. This tower-shaped building was used to sell tickets for the boundless sailboat. The people from the Sky Capital Peak had already announced that the requirement to recruit nominal disciples was to seize the island's source energy. Therefore, during this period of time, many academy students came here to buy tickets and head to the island they wanted to go to in order to prepare to seize the island's source energy. Zhuowen and Xiang walked to the edge of the pier. Soon after, they waved their sleeves and took out the Sun Moon Shuttle. Then, they opened the cabin door and called Xiang to enter the Sun Moon Shuttle together. Although the Sun Moon Shuttle wasn't big, it could barely accommodate 2 people. This was also the reason why Zhuowen didn't bring Whitebrow Empyrean Master and the other 3. The Sun Moon Shuttle couldn't fit 5 people. It's the Sun Moon Shuttle. When they saw the Sun Moon Shuttle that was released, the many students in front of the pagoda building who had bought tickets were stunned. Soon after, their eyes revealed expressions of envy and jealousy. Swoosh! The complicated runes on the surface of the Sun Moon Shuttle lit up. Then a dark blue flame shot out from its tail. With a whoosh, it shot out, rushing towards the depths of the Sea of Bitterness. In the dark space, Xiang silently sat cross-legged at the back of the cabin. He was consolidating his current realm. After all, he had just advanced to the Emperor realm. If he didn't consolidate it in time, his realm would become unstable in the future. Zhuowen silently looked at the map of the Sea of Bitterness that Bei Xian had given him. It turned out that there were a total of 520 islands in the Sea of Bitterness. Among them, there were 5 islands that were at the front, far surpassing the other hundreds of islands. And these 5 islands were Splendid Spirit Island, Azura Island, Sea Heart Island, Horizon Island, and Night Demon Island. The quality of the island source on these 5 islands was the highest. If a martial artist could obtain the island source of one of these 5 islands, then the effect of increasing their talent would be the best. It was worth mentioning that Excellent God Island's force was the strongest among the 5 islands. However, it wouldn't erupt its source energy. The main reason was that Master Mu Feng of the Academy had used a Supreme Origin Array to seal the source energy of Excellent God Island in the depths of the island. The reason why he did this was to ensure that the source energy of Excellent God Island wouldn't be lost. This was because the eruption of the source energy of the island would inevitably weaken the lifespan of the island. Naturally, it would also affect the quality of the source energy of Excellent God Island. Therefore, every time the source energy of the island erupted, the outer court students would basically go to the other islands to seize the source energy. After all, Excellent God Island wouldn't erupt its source energy. How could they compete for the source energy? Whoosh! In the sky above the vast and dark Sea of Bitterness, a shuttle-like black light burst out. Its tail spewed out blue flames, dragging a long blue line above the Sea of Bitterness. Boom! A monstrous black wave surged up like a giant palm from the Sea of Bitterness. It blasted towards the shuttle of Sun and Moon. What a terrifying wave. I have to dive to the bottom of the Sea of Bitterness. In the cabin, Zhuowen also noticed the black wave that was a few hundred feet high. His face changed slightly. His right hand pressed on the control panel in front of him. A surge of origin energy gushed out. The shuttle of Sun and Moon buzzed and dived into the Sea of Bitterness. Bang! Chapter 11:14. Blood rushed. The Sun and Moon shuttle flew above the Sea of Misery for an entire month before Zhuowen discovered that an extremely vast island had appeared several hundred kilometers ahead of them. This island was much smaller than Excellent Spirit Island, only about 2/3 of the island's surface area. What was strange was that the sky above the island was filled with extremely dense blood clouds. The blood clouds seemed to be made up of countless blood auras. Even Zhuowen, who was several hundred miles away in the Sun-Moon shuttle, couldn't help but tremble when he saw the blood clouds. He could feel how powerful and terrifying the blood clouds were. That is, blood rush? Xiang, who was sitting cross-legged behind Zhuowen, also noticed the terrifying blood clouds above Azura Island and couldn't help but cry out in alarm. What is blood rush? Zhuowen frowned and turned to look at Xiang, who was making a fuss behind him, and couldn't help but ask. Xiang's expression became extremely dignified. He respectfully said, "Master, there is something you don't know. This blood rush is actually a natural phenomenon, and the reason for its appearance is that there is an extreme amount of slaughter in a certain area. Corpses are everywhere, and countless blood auras evaporate, forming a blood cloud in the sky. Generally speaking, the places where blood clouds appear are places of great sin and chaos. But the blood clouds above Azura Island are actually so thick that they cover the entire island. It's clear that the chaos of Azura Island far surpasses our imaginations. Who knows how many people must have died to form such a terrifying blood cloud." Hearing this, Zhuowen's expression also became dignified. It seemed that the chaos on Azura Island was indeed beyond his expectations. Then he really had to be careful when entering Azura Island. "Master, this Azura Island should be a place where there are no rules at all. When we enter, we can't be soft-hearted and soft-hearted. Otherwise, there will be endless trouble." Xiang's expression became extremely serious as he said in a low voice, "I know. I have never been soft-hearted when dealing with enemies. Zhuowen nodded. Soon after, he controlled the Sun-Moon shuttle and increased its speed as it approached the blood-colored island. Whoosh! For hours later, the Sun-Moon shuttle finally neared Azura Island's pier. There wasn't much difference between the Azura Island's pier and the splendid Spirit Island's pier. However, most of the buildings on the Azura Island were blood red in color. The Azura Island's soil was also light red in color. It looked quite strange. At this moment, there were many people at Azura Island's pier. These people were basically lining up to buy tickets. It was clear that they were waiting for the boundless sailboat's flight to leave Azura Island. Whoosh! When the Sun-Moon shuttle with its long blue tail landed on the pier, the numerous people lining up at the pier raised their heads and shot their gazes towards the Sun-Moon shuttle. It's the Sun-Moon shuttle? After recognizing the Sun-Moon shuttle, quite a number of people on the dock were initially startled. Soon after, rich greed quietly rose within them. The reputation of the Sun-Moon shuttle in the Bitter Sea wasn't small. Not only did the wonderful Spirit Island have it, the other islands also had it. However, the Sun-Moon shuttle was made by Master Mufeng. The other islands' Sun-Moon shuttles were basically bought from the college for a high price. Therefore, those who were able to possess the Sun-Moon shuttle were either people with great strength or disciples with great backgrounds. These kinds of people were basically people that couldn't be provoked. Although the Sun-Moon shuttle was very valuable, quite a number of people on the pier were still rather rational. They didn't do anything out of line. Instead, their gazes were firmly fixed on the Sun-Moon shuttle that was parked at the pier. They wanted to see what kind of person would come out of the Sun-Moon shuttle. Creak! The cabin door opened, and two figures walked out. These two figures weren't more than 25 years old. Among them, the younger black-robed youth waved his sleeve and stored the Sun-Moon shuttle into his spirit ring. Then, he followed the small path at the edge of the pier and walked towards Azura Island. Early heavenly revered realm? Quite a number of people on the pier saw the aura of the black-robed youth who stored the Sun-Moon shuttle. He was only at the early heavenly revered realm. As for the purple-robed youth behind the black-robed youth, no one could see through him. There were basically two possibilities for such a situation. Either the purple-robed youth's cultivation was so profound that no one could see through him, or he had cultivated some kind of secret technique to conceal his aura. Of course, the people on the pier all thought that the purple-robed youth's situation should belong to the second possibility. Although there weren't any Emperor Realm powerhouses in the queue, there were a few peak heavenly revered realm powerhouses. Xiang's age was really too young, so no one believed that someone could reach the Emperor Realm at such a young age. Therefore, most people thought that the purple-robed youth was hiding his cultivation. Two little fellows below the Emperor Realm actually possessed a treasure like the Sun-Moon shuttle. Obviously, these two fellows were definitely juniors with great backgrounds. Besides the Sun-Moon shuttle, they probably had other powerful treasures on them. Thinking of this, many people on the pier began to become restless. If the person riding the Sun-Moon shuttle was a terrifyingly strong powerhouse, no one would have any devious thoughts. But if it was some juniors with great backgrounds who weren't strong enough, then these martial artists who lived on the edge of a blade all year round wouldn't mind taking some risks. After all, after they seized the spirit rings of these juniors with great backgrounds, they would immediately leave Azura Island and conceal their identities for a period of time. Once the limelight passed, they would be able to roam free and unfettered. At the same time, they would also be able to obtain a generous reward. Why wouldn't they do such a good thing? Dang dang dang. Just as Zhuowen and Xiang stepped out of the pier, three figures immediately blocked their path. These three people were tall and sturdy with bulging muscles. The exposed parts of their bodies were covered with hideous scars that looked like centipedes. And what caused everyone's eyes to widen was that these three people's auras were extremely powerful. They were all at the late heavenly revered realm. Zhuowen's footsteps paused. He looked up and indifferently looked at the three people in front of him. What is the matter? What is the matter? With a single glance, I can tell that you are a rookie that has just arrived at Azura Island. Don't you know that when you enter Azura Island, You should pay a toll? The leader of the group was a robust man with a long scar on his face. His voice was like thunder as he spoke to Zhuowen. Oh, tolls? How much? Zhuowen was startled. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up in a playful smile. The knife-scarred man laughed, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He and his two companions wantonly laughed and said, "You really are a rookie who has just arrived at Azura Island. You actually asked such an idiotic question. Of course you have to hand over everything. Spirit stones, martial tools, pills, and even your life. Hand over everything you have." As the knife-scarred man spoke, many people on the pier looked at Zhuowen and Xiang with pity in their eyes. "You want everything on my body? You also want my life?" Zhuowen asked as if he were mumbling to himself. He finally understood just how chaotic Azura Island was. As soon as he entered the pier, he encountered 3 robbers, and every time they opened their mouths they would rob him of his wealth and life. "That's right. If you know what's good for you, then hurry up and hand it over. Otherwise I'll teach you a lesson," the knife-scarred man coldly whispered. "Okay, since you want me to hand it over, I'll take it out," Zhuowen said with a smile. Then with a flick of his finger, he took out a long black saber. Then a terrifying killing intent surged out. Zhuowen took a step forward and instantly rushed in front of the knife-scarred man like an ape. The knife-scarred man obviously didn't expect Zhuowen to suddenly make such a move. He was caught off guard. However, Zhuowen was only at the early Empyrean realm, so he didn't care too much. His right hand pulled out a cold black iron sword from his waist. Bang! The sound of metal colliding rang out. Then, the knife-scarred man was stunned to discover that his black iron sword had been directly cut in half. Then, the 7-murder saber flashed with a ghostly light and instantly swept past his neck. Poochie! Blood spurted out. The knife-scarred man clutched his neck and stared at Zhuowen. He retreated again and again, hissing sounds coming from his throat. However, he couldn't make any sound at all because his vocal cords had been completely cut off by the 7-murder saber. After hissing a few times, the knife-scarred man's eyes widened, and he fell to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body twitched as his aura slowly faded away. Clang! Zhuowen didn't spare him. The 7-murder saber swept out again, and pierced the knife-scarred man's chest. A terrifying killing intent invaded his body, and immediately shattered the nascent soul in his dantian. "You dared to kill him?" The knife-scarred man's 2 companions finally reacted and shouted in unison. Zhuowen's speed just now was too fast. By the time they reacted, the knife-scarred man had already died. "Why wouldn't I dare? I still want to kill the 2 of you." Zhuowen's eyes were indifferent. He stepped out and stretched out his right hand. The 7-murder saber that had pierced the knife-scarred man's chest reappeared in his hand. With a stomp of his foot, he was like a whirlwind. The killing intent poured into the 7-murder saber, causing a touch of demonic blood to faintly gush out of the black saber. "You still want to kill us? What an arrogant guy. You killed the knife-scarred man with a sneak attack. Do you think that you, an early-stage Heavenly Master warrior, are qualified to fight with us?" The 2 burly men were furious. They pulled out their weapons and flew toward Zhuowen. They surrounded Zhuowen in a triangular formation and wanted to completely strangle him. "Die!" Zhuowen's indifferent voice rang out. His body, which was in midair, suddenly moved in a strange arc and dodged the attacks of the 2 men. Then, the 7 kills blade cut through the air and swept past the necks of the 2 men. Poochie! Poochie! 2 streams of blood spurted out. The 2 men didn't even know what had happened. They only felt a pain in their necks, and then completely lost consciousness. The nascent souls in their bodies were also completely destroyed under the effect of the killing intent contained in the 7-murder saber. In just one move, 3 early-stage Heavenly Masters were killed by Zhuowen. Many warriors on the pier, who were ready to make trouble, suddenly quieted down. Being able to kill 3 early-stage Heavenly Masters in an instant, his battle strength was probably comparable to a peak Heavenly Master warrior. Such a character was not to be trifled with. Is there anyone else who wants to pay the toll? Chapter 11:15. Azura City. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth revealed a mocking smile, as he looked at the silent crowd around the wharf. Soon after, he swiftly stripped off the spirit rings of the 3 strong men and took them for himself. After which he left with Ziyang. Is this really the first time that this guy has come to Azura Island? He is really ruthless. After Zhuowen and Ziyang left, the quiet pier once again burst into an uproar. Their voices were filled with fear. The core region of Azura Island was Azura City. There was an extremely famous building in Azura City called Azura Blood Arena. This Azura Blood Arena was built by Azura Island's master Azura. It was said that it was a building filled with competition and slaughter. The Azura Blood Arena was filled with fanatical lunatics who didn't care about their lives. These fanatical lunatics didn't care about their lives at all. They just wanted to experience the pleasure of killing. When he decided to go to Azura Island, Zhuowen asked Bei Xian for a detailed map of Azura Island. The route marked on the map was extremely detailed. Therefore, following the route on the map, Zhuowen smoothly arrived at Azura City. This was an extremely grand city. The blood-colored city walls matched with the terrifying blood clouds in the sky. It was as if Azura City was a terrifying giant beast that was sleeping on the earth. Standing on a small hill, Zhuowen looked at Azura City in the distance. He could even see the 4 city gates of the city. He could faintly see the densely packed little hay dots that were like ants rushing into the city. Is this Azura City? The corners of Zhuowen's mouth involuntarily muttered softly as he looked at the enormous beast-like city standing in the distance. A glint that could not be looked at directly flashed across his eyes. Master, it's said that Azura City holds an extremely large auction every year. I wonder if we'll be able to make it in time for this year's auction? Ziyang, who stood behind Zhuowen, also revealed an astonished expression as he spoke. If there is really an auction this time, we will be lucky. When the auction was mentioned, a terrifying light erupted from Zhuowen's eyes. If one's first impression of Azura Island was that it was chaotic and bloody, then there was another reason why it was famous. That was that Azura Island was popular with auctions. Moreover, every time there was an auction, extraordinary items would appear. The reason why there were so many extraordinary treasures appearing here was mainly because of the mixed flow of people on Azura Island. Every day, there were many fugitives from all over the world that gathered on Azura Island. With such a frequent flow of people, the chances of a rare treasure appearing here were also extremely high. Generally, these so-called extraordinary treasures were stolen goods obtained by fugitives. Basically, stolen goods were things that couldn't be revealed. Therefore, the probability of extraordinary treasures appearing was extremely high. Because Azura Island often circulated these treasures, the auction business naturally became popular. Moreover, the reputation of Azura Island's auction house was also quite large in the other islands of the Bitter Sea. Therefore, every time there was a large-scale auction, there would be Emperor Realm experts from other islands coming to bid. It was very lively. Azura City, Zhuowen called out. He and Ziyang rushed towards the huge Scarlet City in the distance. As they approached the city gate, Zhuowen raised his head to look at the dozens of feet-high city walls. A trace of awe rose in his heart. This Azura City was indeed magnificent. It was not inferior to the main city of Excellent Spirit Island. The faint smell of blood that leaked out was quite frightening. The flow of people at the city gate was quite terrifying. They were almost lined up like a long dragon. Zhuowen silently stood at the back, waiting for the group to advance. Over a dozen men in tight clothes stood at the entrance of the city. All of them were brimming with auras, and their eyes radiated with a frightening cold light as they stared at the group that was advancing. Moreover, everyone had to pay a considerable fee before they could enter the city. Get lost. A mere supreme being dares to line up in front of me? I think you don't want to live anymore. Suddenly, a thunderous and powerful voice rang out not far from the group in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen's gaze shifted slightly and saw a 3-meter-tall burly man carrying a broadsword on his back. The burly man's eyes were filled with impatience as he lifted up a short young man in front of him. Whoosh! The moment the burly man picked up the short youth, a cold light burst out like the bright moonlight in the night sky, shining in everyone's eyes. The target of this cold light was the burly man's neck. A sense of foreboding arose in the burly man's heart. He abruptly retreated and tilted his neck back, wanting to avoid this attack. However, this attack was too tricky. Although the burly man's reaction was fast enough, a wound was still pierced a few inches below his throat, causing blood to spurt out wildly. "Ah, you little bastard." With a miserable howl, the burly man let go of the short youth's right hand and began to cover his injured neck. Fortunately, his reaction was fast enough, so his vital points were not pierced. Whoosh! Another sound of the air being torn apart sounded out. The short youth who was let go of the man stomped his feet, and his speed soared to the limit. He was like a cannonball as he instantly arrived at the feet of the man. The dagger in his hand unceremoniously sliced towards the man's thigh artery. His movements were smooth, and without any hesitation. Poochie! The sound of a dagger piercing into flesh rang out, followed by a shrill howl from the burly man. The intense pain almost caused the burly man to lose his mind. He pulled out the broadsword on his back with his right hand and fiercely slashed at the short youth. Unfortunately, the short youth was as slippery as a loach. The moment the broadsword slashed over, the young man stomped his feet and actually dodged the broadsword. The dagger in his hand flashed out once again, and its speed was actually slightly faster than before. Poochie! A swift and cold glint flashed past. Then, the burly man's eyes bulged as he stared at the short young man below him. At this moment, the latter was holding a dagger, and the dagger had already pierced deeply into his neck. Blood spurted out like a fountain. The burly man's eyes rolled back, and he directly fell to the ground. The moment the man fell, the nascent soul in his dantian rushed out. However, it was caught by the short youth. "I beg you, please spare me." The man's nascent soul knelt down and begged for mercy. The short youth coldly smiled and crushed the man's nascent soul. The surging nascent soul power was immediately absorbed into his body. He was extremely decisive in his actions. This scene happened like a flash of lightning. However, the surrounding people's eyes were calm and didn't reveal any other emotions. It was as if this was just a rare and ordinary thing to them. Zhuowen's heart slightly trembled. This Azura Island was really chaotic. Just queuing up was enough to cause such a bloody incident. Moreover, from the surrounding people's expressions, this kind of bloody incident should be relatively rare and ordinary. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that the man with the broadsword on his back was at the initial stage of the Golden Venerable Realm. As for the short youth, he was only at the peak of the Sovereign Realm. The difference in cultivation between the two was quite large. However, the short youth was actually able to defeat the strong man and kill him. It seemed that the cultivators of Azura Island couldn't be judged by their cultivation alone. The queue was still advancing in an orderly manner. The bloody incident just now was just a small interlude. After that, it didn't happen again. Soon it was Zhuowen's turn. 100 mid-grade spirit stones. Hurry up and hand it over. If not, scram as soon as possible. A guard at the city gate impatiently shouted at Zhuowen. Zhuowen didn't say much. He directly handed over 200 mid-grade spirit stones and brought Xiang into Azura City. However, in his heart, he was cursing at the exorbitant entrance fee. As they slowly walked along the street, Zhuowen's gaze swept across the shops on both sides of the street. The commerce of Azura Island was indeed developed. Whether it was a medicine shop, a weapon shop, or a cultivation technique shop, anything related to martial arts could be found in the shops on both sides of the street. What made Zhuowen feel helpless was that as he walked along the streets, he saw no less than 10 bloody fights. Moreover, there were a few cases where several lives were lost. What made Zhuowen even more speechless was that many of the warriors in the surroundings were watching and cheering for these bloody fights. As for Azura City, Zhuowen could only use one word to describe it. It was chaotic. There were no rules to speak of here. As long as one had the strength, they could do whatever they wanted. Therefore, after Zhuowen and Xiang entered the city, they deliberately released their auras. Not to mention Zhuowen's initial heavenly venerable aura. Just Xiang's suffocating emperor aura alone was enough to make many people with evil intentions give up. I should inquire about this Azura City. Zhuowen furrowed his brows. He had just arrived in Azura City, so naturally, he wasn't familiar with the city. he had to find out more information about the thousand-fold fossil. Moreover, he also had to find out more information about the thousand-fold fossil. Otherwise, it wouldn't be wise for him to wander around the city blindly. Sir, you look very familiar. Your face looks unfamiliar. This should be your first time in Azura City, right? Suddenly, a somewhat cautious voice came from behind Zhuowen. Shortly after, Zhuowen saw a somewhat skinny dark-faced man behind him. His eyes flickered as he smiled flatteringly at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's initial heavenly venerable aura and Xiang's emperor aura made the skinny man's heart tremble. However, the skinny man's ability to observe people's expressions was very strong. When he saw Zhuowen's confused expression while walking on the street, he concluded that Zhuowen was a newcomer to Azura City. Chapter 11:16. Two of the two people in front of him, one was an initial stage Empyrean, and the other was most likely an emperor. If he could guide them and satisfy them, he might be able to obtain a considerable reward. This was also the reason why the skinny man had mustered his courage and stopped Zhuowen and Xiang. Zhuowen looked at the skinny man in front of him and narrowed his eyes. This is indeed our first time in Azura Island. May I know why you stopped us? The skinny man's cultivation wasn't high. He was only at the initial stage of the Supreme Being realm. Moreover, his aura was weak. He should have broken through to the initial stage of the Supreme Being realm by relying on some kind of medicine. His strength was much weaker than an ordinary initial stage Supreme Being realm expert. The skinny man's expression froze for a moment. Then he said with a flattering smile, "Sirs, since this is the first time you have come to Azura City, you must be extremely unfamiliar with this place. This lowly one is a native of Azura City, so I know Azura City like the back of my hand. Do the two of you need a guide?" Zhuowen and Xiang looked at each other. Shortly after, Zhuowen chuckled and said, "So this is your goal? We really don't know much about Azura City. If you can satisfy us as a guide, we won't let you suffer a loss in terms of reward." The eyes of the shriveled man flickered, and he hurriedly said, "Sirs, don't worry. This lowly one will definitely satisfy you. Sirs, since you have just entered Azura City, you must be tired from the long journey. Why don't you go to an inn to rest?" "All right. Take us to an inn first," Zhuowen said with a nod. "All right. This little one just happens to know an inn with a decent price and a good environment. I will lead you there." The skinny man nodded and bowed. His attitude was extremely good. Moreover, his words were respectful and cautious, which made Zhuowen and Xiang quite satisfied. Along the way, through their conversations, Zhuowen learned that the skinny man was called Shawshank. The skinny man also gave Zhuowen a detailed explanation of the distribution of forces in Azura City, allowing Zhuowen to have a general understanding of Azura City. In Azura City, the most famous building was the Azura Blood Arena. This Azura Blood Arena was built by the Azura Island's island master, Azura Li Di. To put it bluntly, the Azura Bloodbath was actually a bloody arena. It was said that after entering the Azura Bloodbath, one had to kill the opponent to end the battle. It could be said that the Azura Bloodbath was an extremely cruel place. You either kill or be killed. This kind of bloody battle was also the easiest way to stimulate a cultivator's nerves. If they reached the point of excitement, many spectators in the stands wouldn't mind spending a lot of money just to vent this refreshing feeling. The main reason why so many martialists were willing to enter the Azura Blood Arena to fight was because the Azura Blood Arena was the easiest place to get rich. Winning a battle would allow one to obtain extremely generous rewards. If one could win 10 battles in a row in the Azura Blood Arena, then the wealth one could obtain was absolutely unimaginable. Of course, in the Azura Blood Arena, there were very few cultivators who could maintain a 10-match winning streak. Basically, they were all monstrous characters. Among them, the most famous was the monstrous genius of Azura Blood Manor, Yama Crown Prince. Azura Blood Manor was a force established by Azura Li Di, and was the strongest force in Azura City. Yama Crown Prince was Azura Li Di's son. Among his many sons, he was the most talented one. He was not more than 25 years old, but his cultivation had already reached the peak of the heavenly venerable realm. It was said that his battle strength was terrifying and could fight against a first-level Emperor realm expert. Of course, other than Azura Blood Manor, which was the largest force in Azura City, there were two other forces that were just below Azura Blood Manor. These two forces were Fine Universe Auction House and Blood Splashing Gang. Among them, Fine Universe Auction House was second, and Blood Splashing Gang was the last. Shawshank brought Zhuo and Ziyang to an inn that wasn't big, but had a pretty good environment. The inn was extremely clean and tidy. In this Azura city that was filled with blood and slaughter, it was like a snow lotus that stood alone in this world. This made Zhuo feel somewhat astonished. This is a high-grade spirit stone. Go and buy a complete map of Azura City for us. The remaining spirit stones will be your reward for this trip. Zhuo threw the high-grade spirit stone at him and said indifferently. Shawshank caught the spirit stone that was emitting a lustrous white light. His hands trembled, and his eyes revealed an extremely excited expression. He quickly nodded and bowed. Yes, yes, yes. Many thanks, Lord. This little one will definitely help you buy the complete map of Azura City. In fact, Shawshank would have been satisfied with just 10 middle-grade spirit stones. But Zhuo threw out a high-grade spirit stone. This thing was worth 1,000 middle-grade spirit stones. Although he still needed to buy the map of Azura Island, the remaining spirit stones were still a considerable amount. How could Shawshank not be excited? Go. You'd better not have any bad thoughts. Our things aren't that easy to take. You have to deliver the map of Azura City, or else you know the consequences. Ziyang, who was standing behind Zhuo, coldly said. That cold voice made the excited Shawshank feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His whole body trembled, and he quickly smiled. Two lords, don't worry. I won't mess this up. After saying that, Shawshank left the inn under Zhuo's instructions. Zhuo and Ziyang slowly walked into the inn. In fact, Zhuo didn't care about the high-grade spirit stone, since he had obtained nearly 200 top-grade spirit stones in the True Vein Forest, and the number of high-grade spirit stones on him had reached nearly 1,000,000. How could he care about a mere high-grade spirit stone? However, this time he had asked Shawshank to buy the map. If Shawshank had any bad thoughts and wanted to run away with the money, Zhuo wouldn't let him off so easily. The inn was quite quiet. Zhuo and Ziyang silently chose a seat, ordered a few dishes, and waited for Shawshank to return. After waiting for about half an incense stick to burn, Ziyang frowned and whispered to Zhuo, Master, it's been so long, but Shawshank still hasn't returned. Could he have run away with the money? Zhuo's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. He said indifferently, If he really dares to, then he's really unlucky. I've marked that spirit stone on it. Let's go and take a look. After saying that, the two stood up and directly left the inn. Following the mark on the spirit stone, the two passed through many streets and soon arrived in front of a rather luxurious shop. Treasure Gathering Building. Zhuo softly muttered the name of this shop. Soon after, his gaze was attracted by an empty space in front of the shop. This was because there was a group of people gathered at the empty space. These people's gazes were all directed towards the center of the empty space with mocking expressions in their eyes. Shawshank, you've got guts. You have a high-grade spirit stone in your hand, but you didn't come to show your filial piety to us. Instead, you bought such a lousy map. You're really courting death. A rather overbearing and arrogant voice came from the open space. In the center of the open space stood two figures. One of them was kneeling on the ground, prostrating himself on the ground and muttering something. It seemed that he was begging for mercy. Lord Tuyu, this spirit stone really doesn't belong to this lowly one. It belongs to the two big shots that this lowly one led. They ordered this lowly one to come and buy this map. Moreover, the two big shots are not simple. One of them is very likely to be an Emperor realm expert. I hope that Lord Tuyu can be magnanimous and let this lowly one off this time. The one kneeling on the ground was actually Shawshank. At this moment, his eyes were filled with humility as he repeatedly begged for mercy. Emperor realm expert? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? You think I'll be deceived by you? Emperors are lofty existences. How could they possibly allow a lowly venerable like you to lead the way? What a joke. The man named Tu Yu fiercely kicked Shawshank's chest and continued coldly. Since you can take out a high-grade spirit stone to buy this map, it means that you have more than one spirit stone on you, right? Hand them all over. Shawshank couldn't explain his suffering. He bitterly smiled and said, Lord Tu Yu, I really don't have any more spirit stones on me. Moreover, what I said just now was true. You can't touch this thing. Otherwise, a great disaster will befall you. Bang! Tu Yu's foot landed on Shawshank's face, causing the latter's face to be directly buried in the ground. He could only let out a whimper and said, Don't bullshit me. How could an Emperor Realm expert like you encounter one? Moreover, I'm a member of the Splashing Blood Gang. Even if an Emperor Realm expert were to come personally, I'm afraid that he wouldn't do anything to me. Does he dare to offend the Splashing Blood Gang? As soon as Tu Yu's words came out, the surrounding people showed disdain. This Tu Yu was just an outer disciple of the Splashing Blood Gang. His status was insignificant. If an Emperor Realm expert were to come personally, the Splashing Blood Gang wouldn't protect Tu Yu. They might even send this guy out as an apology. Oh, you really think that an Emperor Realm expert wouldn't dare to touch you? Suddenly, a slightly mocking voice rang out, breaking the rather stagnant atmosphere in the open space. Tu Yu lifted his chin slightly, while his eyes revealed a trace of arrogance. Soon after, his eyes turned towards the source of the voice, only to see two figures slowly walking out from the crowd. One of them was dressed in a black robe, while the other was dressed in purple. The aura on their bodies was extremely surging, especially the purple-clothed young man. The aura on his body was incomparably vast and mighty like the ocean. Feeling the powerful auras from the two, Tu Yu's face froze. Then he frowned and asked, Who are these two friends? Woo-woo. Two lords. At this moment Shawshank, who was under Tu Yu's foot, hurriedly struggled. He raised one of his eyelids and saw Zhuowen and Xiang. His eyes immediately revealed a trace of surprise. Hearing Shawshank's words, Tu Yu's heart trembled. His body stiffened slightly. He secretly thought that what Shawshank said was true. The upper-grade spirit stone really did belong to someone else. The two people in front of him gave him a great deal of pressure. The black-robed young man's cultivation was probably at the early heavenly venerable realm. Tu Yu could still feel it. However, the aura of the purple-robed young man beside the black-robed young man was somewhat strange and unpredictable. It was as deep and boundless as the ocean. Standing in front of this person, Tu Yu felt like a lone boat in the ocean that could capsize at any time. Chapter 11:17. Azura Blood Arena. Sirs, you are. Tu Yu hurriedly lifted his right foot, which was stepping on Shawshank, and bowed to Zhuowen and Xiang. Tu Yu's cultivation was only at the initial stage of the Golden Exalt stage. Forget about Xiang. Even Zhuowen could crush him with one hand. Tu Yu naturally did not dare to be impudent in front of Zhuowen and Xiang, who both exuded terrifying auras. Shawshank hurriedly got up and came to Zhuowen's side in a somewhat sorry state. He said somewhat angrily, Sirs, the map that I bought for you was torn apart by this Tu Yu, and the remaining spirit stones were also snatched away by him. You tore up the map and took the spirit stones? Hearing this, Zhuowen's gaze fell on Tu Yu. His slow voice was filled with a terrifying chill, causing Shawshank's eyelids to twitch. He hurriedly smiled and said, Sirs, this lowly one has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I did not know that Shawshank was sent by you. Otherwise, I would not have dared to do this even if I had 100 guts. Destroy your own cultivation. Zhuowen calmly spat out these words. Tu Yu's face instantly turned pale, and he could not help but take a few steps back. Sirs, I am a member of the Splashing Blood Gang. I can hand over everything I have. Can you let me live? Tu Yu said in a low voice. Destroy your own cultivation, or bear the consequences, Zhuowen calmly said. In an instant, the atmosphere in the open space became extremely solemn. The surrounding onlookers quickly distanced themselves. Zhuowen and Xiang's auras were very powerful, and they did not want to get involved in this mess. Tu Yu's expression finally changed. His eyes flickered, and he suddenly stomped his foot, fleeing in the opposite direction. Tuyu knew better than anyone what kind of place Azura City was. In such a chaotic city, if one had no cultivation, it was undoubtedly a fate worse than death. Therefore, he would not destroy his own cultivation. Xiang, Zhuowen said in an indifferent voice. Standing behind him, Xiang flicked his right finger. A purple force shot out from his finger like a cannonball, and instantly caught up with the fleeing Tuyu. Ah! A miserable shriek resounded. Immediately, the purple force that made contact with Tuyu's body suddenly erupted into purple flames, instantly devouring Tuyu's entire body. Many people's eyes turned cold as they stared at the figure that had been incinerated by the purple flames in the distance. They stared at Zhuowen and Xiang with fear. Tuyu was at the initial golden exalt stage after all, yet he had been annihilated in a single move. This was truly shocking. Shashank, who was standing beside Zhuowen, was trembling all over. In a sense, Tuyu was a powerhouse that he had to look up to. However, such a powerhouse that he used to look up to had now been killed with a flick of a finger. He knew very well how terrifying the two people in front of him were. Hurry up and buy the map. We'll wait for you at the inn. Zhuowen threw down another high-grade spirit stone and instructed indifferently. Then he left with Xiang, leaving behind the crowd that was looking at each other in dismay. Under the envious gazes of the crowd, Shashank stepped back into the luxurious shop. Obviously, the fact that Shashank, who was merely at the initial golden exalt stage, was able to climb up the ranks of Zhuowen and Xiang was like a pie that had fallen from the sky. As for Tuyu, no one gave it much thought. Although Tuyu was a member of the Splashing Blood Gang, he was merely an outer disciple. The Splashing Blood Gang would not mobilize so many people to offend a powerhouse that was suspected to be at the Emperor stage for an outer disciple. Not long after, Shashank returned to the inn and handed the map to Zhuowen. Zhuowen casually instructed Shashank and sent him away. At the same time, he booked 2 rooms in the inn and planned to stay there first. Master, before Shashank left, he said that there will be a large-scale auction at the Jianing auction house in a month. Does Master plan to go? In the corridor, Xiang suddenly asked Zhuowen. Of course I'm going. Strange treasures frequently appear on Azura Island. Perhaps I can obtain what I need at the auction. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he said. After the two returned to the room, Zhuowen set up a soundproof restriction in the room. With a flick of his finger, he took out a sparkling white longsword and handed it to Xiang. This is an emperor weapon? Xiang was startled when he received the longsword. Soon after, his eyes revealed a look of disbelief. This sword is called the Carefree Sword. I obtained it from the Carefree sect in West Path City. It's a low-grade emperor weapon. Take it and use it first. Zhuowen said indifferently. Xiang's eyes revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Soon after, he revealed a trace of hesitation and said, Master, an emperor weapon is so precious, yet you gave it to me. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, Azura Island is extremely chaotic, and there are many emperor realm masters. Perhaps we will encounter some trouble later. You have just advanced to the emperor realm, and your strength isn't too strong. If you have an emperor weapon, then your strength will surpass that of an ordinary first-layer Emperor Realm Master. It will be of great help to me. Ziyang was startled, but he didn't hesitate to accept the Carefree Sword. What Zhuowen said was right. Azura Island was extremely chaotic, and there might really be endless troubles waiting for them. If they didn't have enough strength, they might suffer a calamity. Zhuowen's actions were only a precautionary measure. Moreover, Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the early Heavenly Master realm. He couldn't display the power of the Carefree Sword. In addition, Zhuowen had a high-grade Emperor weapon, like the Slaughter Abstinence Violation blade in his spirit ring. Therefore, he didn't care too much about the Carefree Sword. Go back to your room and refine the Carefree Sword. 1 month later, after the Jianing auction house's auction, we will go in. Zhuowen said lightly. Ziyang nodded and left the room. On the other hand, Zhuowen's gaze flickered as he sat upright on the wooden chair in the room, and muttered to himself in deep thought. Back then, Master Mufeng said that the 1,000-fold fossil is in the Azura Blood Arena. I wonder where it is. You can go take a look at the Azura Blood Arena. In any case, don't you have the map of Azura City? Xiao Hei's lazy voice sounded. You're right. I have to go take a look at the Azura Blood Arena. At the same time, I have to inquire about the whereabouts of the thousand-fold fossil. But it's already late, so I'll talk about it tomorrow. The night passed in silence. The next day Zhuowen woke up early. He pushed open the door and headed straight for the Azura Blood Arena. Ziying needed to refine the carefree sword, so Zhuowen didn't let him follow him. With the map provided by Shawshank, Zhuowen was like a fish in water in Azura City. Soon, he arrived at the Azura Blood Arena. It was a huge circular arena that covered an area of dozens of miles. Thick blood pillars that were nearly 100 feet tall supported the huge circular arena. The moment he approached the Azura Blood Arena, Zhuowen could faintly hear the tsunami-like clamor coming from the Azura Blood Arena. Around the Azura Blood Arena, there were dozens of blood-colored passageways. Each passageway was guarded by 2 powerful martial warriors. At this moment, every passageway was lined up like a dragon. They should be spectators waiting to enter the Azura Blood Arena. Zhuowen did not enter. Instead, he stood outside and took out a communication jade symbol paper, summoning Shawshank from yesterday. After all, the latter was a native of Azura City, so he naturally had to ask Shawshank about the Azura Blood Arena. Not long later, Shawshank arrived beside Zhuowen and bowed. "Sir, I wonder why you've summoned this lowly one." "Shawshank, have you heard of the thousand-fold fossil?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. "Thousand-fold fossil?" Shawshank was startled, and then carefully asked, "Sir, could it be that you want this thousand-fold fossil?" Seeing Shawshank's expression, Zhuowen frowned and nodded. "Yes. Is there a problem with it?" "Actually, there's no problem. It's just that this thousand-fold fossil has another name. It's called the blood crystal source. It's the essence of the blood crystal vein. And this blood crystal source only appears every time the Azura Island's source erupts. In other words, if you want to obtain this thousand-fold fossil, you can only obtain it 2 months later when the island's source erupts." Shawshank said softly. The thousand-fold fossil is the source of the blood crystal? Zhuowen was startled. He immediately thought of the blood-red crystal during the Divine Academy's test. At that time, Cheng Dong had told him that it was called the blood crystal and came from Azura Island. In other words, the only way to obtain the blood crystal on Azura Island was through the Azura Blood Arena? No wonder the tester said that he risked his life to obtain the blood crystal. The rules of the Azura Blood Arena were so cruel that it felt like one was risking their life. "Sir, if you want to participate in the island's source battle 2 months later, you must register at the Azura Blood Arena. This is because the Azura Blood Arena is located at the center of Azura Island. If the island's source erupts, it will erupt from the Azura Blood Arena," Shawshank said with a flattering smile. "Register?" Zhuowen asked with some doubt. Shawshank smiled embarrassedly. He knew that Zhuowen didn't understand at all. He could only patiently explain. The so-called registration is actually the qualifications you have in the Azura Blood Arena. In the Azura Blood Arena, if you obtain 3 consecutive victories or more, you will be awarded the Azura Medal. Only cultivators with the Azura Medal are qualified to participate in the island's source battle 2 months later. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of understanding. It seemed that the island's source battle wasn't something that could be casually participated in. Thinking of this, Zhuowen walked straight to the entrance. Shawshank followed closely behind. After paying a certain fee, the two entered the Azura Blood Arena. After walking out of the dark corridor, Zhuowen's ears became clearer and clearer. These sounds were like rolling thunder, echoing in Zhuowen's ears. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.